Good evening and welcome to the Tuesday, November 14th, 2023 business meeting of the Olympia City Council. For the record, we have a quorum. All council members are present and up on the dais. We have no announcements, so I'll move right to approving tonight's agenda.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. We don't have special recognition, so we're going to go directly into public comment this evening. For those of you that were just in the room, you heard me announce that we have an unprecedented amount of people here. Not unprecedented, but unprecedented in the last few years. People here in chambers and remotely that want to speak to us tonight. 99% of them are regarding the rental registry. So I am going to ask people to stage themselves after I call your names over here by the podium. You have 2 minutes. There's a countdown clock that'll be started on your right, or my right. And if you hear somebody say something that was in your comments, if you can kind of condense yours so that we can get as many people in as possible in this first half hour that we have dedicated to public comment. We have additional public comment at the end of the meeting after our regular business items have been tended to. So if you so desire and you don't get called, you can stay through the meeting. And since most of you are interested in the discussion on item 6A, I highly recommend you stay, and we'll accept public comments after that too. All right, so here we go. I am going to start with, as I said, I was like, all on top of this, right? Okay. So we're going to start with Carter Nelson, followed by Sherry Piles, followed by Sherry Black, followed by Cindy Blyle.
All right, can you hear me? Okay, awesome. Good evening, Mayor Selby and members of the council. Thank you for allowing me to speak tonight. My name is Carter Nelson. I'm here on behalf of the Washington Multifamily Housing Association, otherwise known as WMFA. We represent over 328,000 units in the state, and our members own or manage about 4,300 units in Olympia. While well-intentioned, we do not believe that this program will do anything but increase costs for housing providers and in turn for residents in Olympia. We feel that the development of this program left out our organization and our membership. Whether this was intentional or not, it has led to a proposal that our property managers in Olympia feel will greatly hinder their ability to operate. These operators are dedicated to keeping their residents housed and keeping their rent as low as is feasible for the property's overall costs. $35 a unit is the highest fee we have heard of in the state. The program is supposedly mirrored after neighboring cities with existing programs such as Lakewood, but yours will charge housing providers almost 3 times as much per door. We understand that there are bad actors who violate restrictions. However, imposing a system that places the burden of cost on good actors providing housing in Olympia is not conducive to reaching our common goal of providing more housing to people in our region. Olympia's population is expected to grow by almost 21,000 by 2045. To serve these new residents, it's anticipated that the city will need over 13,000 new housing units. Although there's an exemption for new housing, the cost of this proposal will push housing providers from Olympia when we should be incentivizing growth. We respectfully request that the council postpone consideration of this ordinance tonight until a full dialogue with all stakeholders can occur and more reasonable options can be discussed. We hope that we can work together to find workable solutions and to help elevate and improve housing in Olympia. Thank you.
Thank you. Next I have Sherry Piles, followed by Sarah Black, followed by Cindy Blyle, followed by Kim Mulligan.
Sherry Piles with Team Northwest Property Management. As a property manager in Olympia, I oppose the new proposal for many reasons. In speaking with our owners,
Ms. Piles, can you bring the microphone down?
Yes, sorry.
Thank you.
In speaking with our owners, I have heard over and over about the bureaucratic process involving extra paperwork, obtaining and maintaining a business license, inspections, compliance requirements has left many very discouraged and looking to sell if this ordinance is passed. I propose that the city create an exemption for landlords that have placed their homes into licensed property management firms such as ours to be exempt from the business licensing as they are being managed under our business licenses and rents collected by our firm, and allowing us to perform and provide the city with our inspections. The implementation of a housing registry might dissuade potential landlords from offering their properties for rent and causing them to sell their investments. Instead of imposing regulations on all landlords, I propose refocusing efforts on identifying and addressing specific issues related to problematic or negligent landlords through targeted enforcement. If passed, this will certainly be the demise of affordable housing within the city of Olympia. Please reconsider adding an exemption for the licensed professional landlords and property management companies. We should be working together for a greater good.
Thank you. Next, I have Sarah Black, followed by Cindy Blyle, followed by Kim Mulligan, followed by Jack Bremmel.
Hello, my name's Sarah Black, and I am an owner of a rental property in Olympia, and I also work for Olympic Rentals, which is a residential property management company. I'm speaking in opposition of the rental registration program because I'm unsure of what this proposal is intended to solve. There are already regulations in place for maintenance responses, deposit payments, rent increases, pet deposits, notices, etc. And each time there's a new set of regulations passed, many owners elect to sell their properties. This leads to increased costs for housing in our region and continued lack of affordable housing for those that need it the most. I agree with the previous public comments that were made this evening, and I think that this proposal should be delayed until there's adequate research that could be made to determine the consequences. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, I have Cindy Blyle, followed by Kim Mulligan, followed by Jack Bremmel, followed by Kay Nyberg.
I'm Cindy Blyle, owner of Team Northwest Property Management. This ordinance is encouraging homeowners to sell, which will lessen inventory, creating displaced tenants and lack of affordable housing. Owners and investors will no longer be encouraged to invest in our Olympia area due to the ordinance passed, because there are penalties for investing here, and again, creating an environment for those homes that are left for rent to be higher because tenants will have nowhere else to go. I would like to share owner feedback from some of the owners I manage properties for. Owner Stacy, we have been responsible landlords with our 2 rentals. Our rents are below market value. Our properties are well maintained. If passed, this ordinance will cause us to sell the homes. Owner James, I propose to register property management firms that already comply with your stated goals and in compliance. So we support the concept of the city moving forward with limitations on duplication of efforts on licensed management firms. Owner David, we are fast losing interest in investing in Olympia, especially if this were to pass. It just does not seem necessary for single-family homes. Owner Sandeep, we are legal immigrants in the U.S. We do not possess the eligibility to own a business license. This ordinance will force us to sell our future retirement home, as we will not have the ability to rent it out. The city is crushing our American dream. Owner Carol, this would encourage owners to sell and buy properties in an area without these added regulations, leading to less housing offered in the Olympia area. Owner Marika, I own 9 homes in Olympia and I'm planning to sell. In conclusion, if passed, this bill will create a wedge between landlord and tenants, a loss of inventory, with owners letting us know they will be selling their homes, higher rents for tenants for those owners that choose not to sell.
Thank you. Kim Mulligan, followed by Jack Bremmel, followed by Kay Nyberg, followed by Todd Monahan.
I am Kim Mulligan with Olympic Rentals. We manage hundreds of properties in Thurston County and part of Pierce County. Also own my own personal properties, and I just agree with all these comments we've just heard.
Thank you. Jack Bremmel, followed by Kay Nyberg, followed by Todd Monahan, followed by Eva Leach.
Hi, thanks. I'm a retired state worker. I have 2 rental properties in Olympia. We acquired these rental properties when we sold our house. We bought a new house, then when we sold our first house, we used the money to get some rental properties, and we rent those out at below market rates. I work for the Department of Community Development and then the State Senate as nonpartisan policy staff for 26 years. So I know how hard decisions about housing can be. And if I were in your shoes, I would want to make sure that I have a clearly defined problem in front of me with some clear options for addressing the problem. I'd want to see the data detailing the problem, an analysis of the pros and cons of a variety of options on that particular problem. You know, I don't see that with the analytic process that was carried out on this proposal. I see a solution that's in search of a problem, and or multiple problems. The first whereas in the material, which is talks about prioritizing preservation of existing rental housing stock, suggests that the main problem is the loss of rental housing in Olympia. And does the data support this? I don't know, and I couldn't find it in the material. The enactment of this ordinance is guaranteed to, if that's the problem, the enactment of the ordinance is guaranteed to exacerbate that problem. How? By increasing transaction costs and monetary costs for those who would enter into the market as suppliers of rental housing, as I did. It would cause current landlords like me to sell the rental units out of frustration with the transaction costs and monetary costs. There's subsequent whereases that address health and safety violations. I guess, what are the options for addressing these violations? I would want to, if I were in your shoes, I would want to see the options for that particular problem.
Sorry,
I'm out
that
of
is time.
I hope that you would delay implementation and adoption of this until there can be
Thank
a
you.
work group.
Thank you. I want to remind people that you can also submit your comments to us by email if you're not able to complete all your comments tonight. Thank you. Next, we're going to go to Kay Nyberg. Okay, Kay Nyberg, followed by Todd Monahan, followed by Eva Leach, followed by Peter Lewis.
Hi, I am a special ed teacher at Washington Middle School, and I've been really horrified by everything I've been seeing in Gaza over the last few weeks. I spend all of my days caring for some of the most vulnerable students in our community. I put all of my heart and soul into my work, and what I'm seeing in Gaza is Israel bombing innocent children while they're sleeping, and it brings so much pain into my heart, knowing particularly that a lot of these children who are dying in their sleep are special needs kids who, I can just really resonate with them because of the work that I do. So I'm urging you as to do something that a lot of city councils across the country have done, is create a resolution that would urge higher government officials and urge Israel to create a ceasefire to stop the bloodshed of these innocent children while they're sleeping in their beds. There's lots of other city councils across the country that you could look at for specific language of that resolution. And that's all I've got. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Next, I have Todd Monahan, followed by Eva Leach, followed by Peter Lewis.
Hi, everybody. I'm Todd. I think I know most of you. We've worked together on projects through the city, Missing Middle, Reimagining Public Safety, and a lot through ODA. And I guess I've heard all the other comments. I've submitted mine. You've probably read more than enough from me over the years. Similar comments tonight. But I guess I'd harken back to ODA and what we were able to accomplish in downtown Olympia during COVID, working together as partners. And that's what I think sometimes is missing when we talk about housing, is that idea of partnership. A lot of the proposals and some of the things you passed recently passed really formalize the relationship between what's commonly referred to as landlords and tenants. And so often in the past, I think, as you heard Jack relate to, it's about partnerships between the mom and pop suppliers of housing in our area and the residents that live in those houses. And the more we formalize those relationships and have very strict rules or layers of bureaucracy on it, the harder it is to keep that spirit of partnership together. I would also say, in the development of the policies, I don't want you to delay this. I want you to redirect the efforts. Work together with everybody involved, sort of like we did on Missing Middle, to some success and some not, but it allowed the dialogue to happen, and certainly on the Reimagining project. Work together with the people that are both residents and also providing the housing. I'll bet you we could come up with a common set of solutions to whatever the problems are you're trying to define. And for me, that's really important. Keeping the mom and pop relationship, housing providers in our area, is really important now as the industry consolidates and we have large groups coming from outside buying up housing and providing the rental housing here. They don't have the same incentive as the mom and pops locally.
Thank you. Next, I have Eva Leach, followed by Peter Lewis, followed by Pete Such, followed by Art Arneson.
Hello, my name is Eva Leach, and I'm here to talk about Palestine. As we all hopefully and unfortunately know, there's an ongoing occupation and genocide of Palestinian people by the Israeli government. Over 11,000 Palestinians in Gaza have been killed by Israeli occupation forces since October 7th, 2023. This number includes more than 4,500 children. More than 28,000 people have been injured, with at least 3,000 people reported missing under the rubble, including at least 1,700 children. We in the U.S., a huge provider of weaponry and military aid, has a responsibility to disrupt the flow of arms to Israel and demand our government pressure Israel to stop violence against the Palestinian people. I'm asking the City Council to do the following: demand immediate Israeli ceasefire in Palestine, call for the end of military aid to Israel, call for Israel to open borders and allow humanitarian aid to reach Gaza, pass a resolution declaring that the city of Olympia is in opposition to the genocide of Palestinian people, put pressure on our representatives and legislators to support a current bill in Congress, H.R. 3101, which specifies no U.S. funding can be used for ill treatment of Palestinian children. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, I have Peter Lewis, followed by Pete Such, followed by Art Arneson, followed by, Michael Cade.
Hi, my name is Peter Lewis. I'm 17 years old. People in Palestine are dying. Their deaths directly funded by our taxes in Washington state. You cannot opt out of this or ignore it. Blood stains all of our hands, but you, as our city council, have a special responsibility to do something about it. The Olympia City Council is directly implicit in this genocide. Every second you spend worrying about something else or pushing this under the rug, people are dying. As a citizen of Washington state, I implore you to show some empathy and a spine. Call for a ceasefire now. Thank you. Free Palestine.
Thank you. Next, I have Pete Such, followed by Art Arneson, followed by Michael Cade, followed by Karina Greenlee.
Michael's the next one who's here.
Oh, okay. Okay, so we'll go directly to Michael Cade and Pete Such, Art Arneson, if you're not here. All right.
Thank you very much. Michael Cade, Executive Director of the Economic Development Council, and I'm going to pass some thank you cards over to your staff, or you're going to take them right here. I don't mean to break protocol, but the work that we do, and the work that we do as a partner with the City Council, a lot of times I hear the thank yous from us for the businesses that we help and launch and grow. But I think it's just as important that you hear that because you have provided the platform to do that work. And so what I'd like to do is just simply read the thank you notes that they've provided to me to give to you. So these aren't my words, but please know that I extend and amplify those heartfelt thanks from them to you. Words do not describe the amount of gratitude we have for Olympia City Council. Thank you all so much for the amount of support given to the small businesses in Thurston County. Mi Pueblo has been in business for over a decade, and we have lots of doubts about if we were going to make it through the pandemic, but you all made it possible. Thank you very much. Oscar Alvarez Takira y Mas Mi Pueblo. I'm very appreciative to the City Council for funding the tools that helped me set up my small business. Thank you for helping me launch successfully. Christy Cruz, the Succulent Studio. Thank you, Olympia City Council, for the support for the Center for Business Innovation and the Washington Center for Women in Business. The services and support I received made my opening of my business possible and profitable. Megan Kronk, Humble Cow Ice Cream. Keep up the good work, and thank you very much for your support. Augustine and Lupe Galicia, Dos Hermanos Mexican Kitchen. There's a number of these, but it's important that you hear the gratitude of the work that you do. You do very difficult work. You know, I'm hearing it through a lot of the discussion tonight, but I think when, at the end of the day, what I wanted to make sure that I came tonight is thank you. Thank you for your work and your support of the small business and the entrepreneurs of Thurston County and this community. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Are Pete Such or Art Arneson in the room? All right, you're next then. Just state your name.
Good evening. My name is Art Arneson. I'm here to talk on behalf of I have a similar perspective regarding the building inspection. I have the same viewpoint that the earlier speakers talked about. So I'll go right into the point that I want to talk about is that I'm a board member for a homeowners association, and I have access to all of the data as far as names, addresses, and mailing addresses, et cetera. Of those 77 homeowners, I'm not aware of any of the rental homes. At 15% of our houses in our development are rentals. None of them are owned by corporate entities. They're all local mom and pops, as previously talked about. And this program is going to impact the small investor like myself in owning houses and trying to keep rents reasonable. Both my houses that I have right now are substantially below the going rate for housing at this point in time. And I think a lot of other people are of the same perspective. As we're not big companies in there to make money. We're there as an investment and also to help the community. Thank you.
Thank you. We're going to move on to Karina Greenlee, followed by Kaylin, and I can't read the last name.
Hello, my name is Karina Greenlee, and I'm 19 years old. I am here to demand that you call for a ceasefire in Gaza now. As I speak to you, Palestinians are being murdered in cold blood. These are not accidental casualties. This is a deliberate ethnic cleansing. Human Rights Watch states that Israel's actions against the Palestinian people are so severe that they amount to the crimes against humanity of apartheid and persecution. For those who would argue that the debate over a ceasefire is complex, I disagree. Israel has a massive military with nuclear capabilities. Palestine has no military. Israel receives billions of dollars in international aid. Palestine is experiencing a genocide while elected officials like yourselves turn your backs and cite the complexity of the issue. Over 11,200 Palestinians have been killed since the start of October. It's not complex, it's genocide. Condemn Israel, demand a ceasefire. If you are not in government to protect the lives of innocent people, I don't know what you're doing here. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, I have Kaylin, and when you come to the microphone, you can introduce yourself. Followed by Kaz Voke, can't make it out, followed by Michelle Ryder.
Okay. I'm Callan Daly. I'm 19 years old, and I've been resident of Lacey for a very small amount of time, and I hold the same perspective as a lot of people who have come before me, and I'm here to demand a ceasefire for oh my goodness.
It's all right.
For Israel, sorry. It's the first time here. But it is very important as lawmakers, and I understand that your job is very hard. There are lots of issues for you to address. However, it is you who have the power to take these issues to the top where they belong and to make things right and to save lives. That is why you're here, right? You're here to make people's lives better. And I'm sorry that this isn't as formal as it might be, but Palestinian children, Palestinian lives have the same weight as ours. We all know this. And, geez, sorry. We need to do what we can to make things right. And it's part of why I'm working up the courage to sit here now and try to speak to you. Because even people like me are seeing what's happening on the news, albeit very slowly, but please, we urge you, call for a ceasefire, create an absolution like other city councils. Free Palestine. Thank you for your time. Sorry.
Thank you. Next, I have Michelle Ryder, followed by Whitney Carr. I'm sorry, Kaz first. Sorry, Kaz. Next, Michelle Ryder, followed by Whitney Carr.
Hey, my name is Kaz Vokun. I'm going to join the chorus talking about Gaza, the genocide in Gaza. Thank you so much for listening to all of us today. I think that as a community in Olympia, we can do some things to help, and I want to address those. As has been stated before, there have been over 2,000 deaths, nearly half of those children, innocent children in Gaza. And it would take me over 2 hours to read the names of the children, just the children, to you. This is unprecedented, and it's hard to know what we can do. But I've had the honor of meeting some beautiful Palestinian people in our community and heard that there are many Palestinians in our community that are afraid to go outside right now, afraid to be in public. So I think that us coming together as a community, making a resolution and saying that we do not support the genocide that is happening in Palestine, and we call for a ceasefire, could be so, so impactful to help our Palestinian neighbors feel supported. I also want to encourage you to use your power as council members to call for the passing of the resolutions that are against the genocide. I think HR 3103 is one. Also the resolution introduced by Cori Bush. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, I have Michelle Ryder, followed by Whitney Carr, followed by Emily McHugh.
My name is Michelle Ryder, and I support an immediate ceasefire in Gaza, along with 2/3 of American voters and 80% of Democrats. I'm speaking tonight because I would like to see the City Council pass a resolution in support of a ceasefire and endorse House Resolution 786, led by Congresswoman Cori Bush. I condemn Hamas's horrific attack on Israel on October 7th. I also condemn Israel for engaging in hospital warfare and turning Ashifa Hospital, Al Quds Hospital, Kaman Adwan Hospital, the Swedish clinic, the Indonesian hospital, the Children's Cancer Hospital, Rantisi Hospital, Al Mahdi Hospital, and others into battlegrounds. I condemn Israel for targeting doctors, health sector workers, journalists, ambulance personnel, civil defense personnel, as well as the bombing of refugee camps, UN facilities, schools, universities, mosques, churches, homes, roads, ambulances, water wells, bakeries, humanitarian aid, sewage systems, and telecommunications infrastructure. I condemn Israel for displacing 3/4 of the population of Gaza under the threat of arms. I condemn Israel for killing an unprecedented 41 journalists and 101 UN workers. I condemn Israel for killing 11,000 Palestinians in a little over 30 days, and 70% of those are women and children. I condemn Israel for imposing a full siege on a captive civilian population, denying them water, fuel, food, electricity, medicine, and humanitarian aid, while dropping more metric tons of explosives on them than were in the nuclear bomb we dropped on Hiroshima. There is no justification for Israel's behavior. I want safety for the people of Israel, but that can't and won't come at the expense of the Palestinians, a people who had nothing to do with the Holocaust. Even if Al-Qaeda or ISIS or the thing you fear most in life were hiding among the people of Gaza, that still would not be justification enough to justify the slaughter and starvation of civilians en masse. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. We have Whitney Carr, followed by Emily McHugh, and we're just going to squeeze it in, you guys, 30 minutes. Bob Jacobs.
Hi, I'm Whitney, and I'm here to demand that the City Council members pass a resolution, as many cities across the country have already done, declaring that the City of Olympia is in opposition to the genocide of the Palestinian people, and that the people of the City of Olympia demand an immediate ceasefire in Gaza and the unfettered allowance of humanitarian aid into the region. And I want to join my friends in also urging the council to use their positions, because you have the positions of power, to support the bill currently in Congress called HR 3103, which specifies that no U.S. funding can go towards, quote, the ill treatment of Palestinian children. And it's pretty wild that we have to specify that that is the case, but I guess that we do. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Next, we have Emily McHugh, followed by Bob Jacobs, who is our last person signed up for in-person comment.
Hello, everyone. My name's Emily McHugh. I'm an artist in town, and I'm here also to say that I would support a resolution passed by the City Council to call for a ceasefire. I spoke last week, so I'm going to keep this really short, but just echo what a lot of people have already said, and that a majority of Americans would support a ceasefire, and that at every level of government we can give voice to our community, and to and that you as City Council members can put that pressure upwards as well. And yeah, thanks for listening to everyone tonight.
Thank you. And our last speaker tonight is Bob Jacobs.
Good evening, Bob Jacobs, 720 Governor Stevens, Olympia. I'm here to talk about Agenda Item 6A, the rental housing issue, and specifically the inspection portion. I've been analyzing regulatory issues for over 50 years. There's a right way to do such issues. First, identify the problem. In this case, that has been done. There have been reports of health and safety issues in rental housing in Olympia. Second, gather data, such as the number of people involved, the types of health and safety issues, the severity of these issues, fatalities, etc. In this case, no real data have been reported. All we have in the staff report is quotes from a handful of local residents, which is extremely unreliable as a measure of any problems. Next is a look at possible government interventions to ameliorate the problem. This, too, has not been done. Just one intervention has been considered. The final step is to evaluate the possible interventions to determine which would do more good than harm, and choose the one that has the greatest net benefit. This, of course, could not be done since alternative interventions were not identified. The Council and staff have started with the last step, choosing a desired intervention and just looking at how it could be implemented. This is commonly called a solution in search of a problem. Not having gathered data or looked at alternative courses of action, you cannot know whether the chosen intervention is the best available. In fact, you cannot know if it will do more good than harm. Think the war on drugs. I urge you to start over. Do this right. You might be surprised at what you'll learn.
Thank you. So that concludes in-person public comment for this evening. For those of you that are tuning in remotely, we will be able to listen to your comments after we finish tonight's business agenda. I'm sorry, we had 45 people signed up, 33 people signed in. We got through 20 in 30 minutes, which I think is the fastest we've ever gotten through. So thank you very much for that. But we will definitely, if you can hang with us, we'll come back to you after we finish item 6A, which is the end of our business meeting. All right, we're going to go on to tonight's consent calendar adoption. I need a motion.
So moved.
Second.
All right. I have one pull, or item 4B. Any other items? All right, so pulling item 4B, which is approval of resolution ratifying and confirming authorization of acceptance of phase 1 of the American-Made Buildings Upgrade Prize. So I have our climate program manager, Pamela Braff, in the room, and she's going to speak to number one, what a prize is, and what this the intention of this money.
Good evening, Council. Pamela Braff, Director of Climate Programs. Yes, the first thing, what is a prize? It's very different from the way that we typically receive funding. A prize is not a grant. It is funding. Really, it's an award for work that's already been done as opposed to work that we're preparing to do. And so in this case, the U.S. Department of Energy developed the Buildings Upgrade Prize as a capacity building prize focused on reducing greenhouse gas emissions in existing buildings through energy efficiency and electrification. In phase 1, this is going to be a multi-phase program. Phase 1, Buildings Up awarded over $22 million in cash prizes, as well as technical assistance to teams who submitted concept proposals. So the prize is for the concept proposal that we worked to develop. The City of Olympia is one of 45 teams who was awarded one of these Buildings Upgrade prizes. The prize is a one-time disbursement of cash awarded by Department of Energy on the merit of the work that was already completed. In this case, it was our concept proposal, and we worked with Olympia Community Solar on this. Only phase one winners are invited to then compete in future phases of the prize. So what this does is it also sets us up to be able to continue to receive more funding in future phases. So I just wanted to share a little bit about what our concept proposal was. And again, the prize is not saying that this is the work that we're gonna do. It's a prize for the work that we did to develop this concept as a way to improve energy efficiency and resilience and decarbonize rental housing in Olympia. So our concept proposal was to develop what we're calling the Energize Olympia Rental Navigator, and it was building off of the success of our Energize Olympia program. And the Navigator would provide guidance and outreach and technical support to catalyze widespread building electrification retrofits for affordable housing, specifically affordable rental housing in Olympia. And the idea was to develop a program that would support tenants and property owners in utilizing the billions of dollars of funding that are coming through the Inflation Reduction Act and the Infrastructure Act and all of these new programs that are being developed. The idea for the Navigator would be to develop a program that works directly with landlords and works directly with tenants to develop actionable building decarbonization and resilience upgrade plans, and then provide the ongoing support to help them implement those plans. And it's really focused on reducing friction, eliminating barriers, making it easier to do something that's already pretty challenging. And we really wanted to find a way to help overcome what happens when there's funding available but you don't know how to access it. What happens when there's funding available but you don't know where to start, or you have a gap, or you just need that little bit of support to get started and see it through to the end. That's what this concept proposal was for. And so, we know these type of programs have a lot of different potential benefits: reduced energy bills, improved indoor air quality, comfort, cooling, as well as energy independence and resilience to electric grid disruptions. So a lot of benefits for really both landlords and also the tenants of those buildings. And it's particularly important for rental housing because we know that we have average national data that tells us that rental housing is less energy efficient than owner-occupied housing, and that renters spend more of their income on their energy bills than owner-occupied housing. And so programs focused on affordable rental housing have a lot of capacity to improve the condition of that housing for its tenants. So the city has been awarded a $350,000 cash prize. That's our portion of this prize. The other piece of it is $50,000 for Olympia Community Solar. And then we would receive 140 hours of technical assistance to then develop a pilot implementation plan for a program that would be similar to what we've envisioned here. And so before you this evening, you have a resolution that ratifies and confirms the authorization and signature by the city manager to accept that $350,000 prize awarded for phase one of the American-Made Buildings Upgrade Prize.
Thank you, Dr. Braff. That was very informative, and I wanted to bring this forward for our community to understand that this is building on the work that you've been doing already for us. And so it's really, really an honor to have been trusted, 45 in the nation, to have gotten this money, and so congratulations. And I just had a question about what part of that can you describe the Rental Navigator program, and is that a new FTE, or is that something that you have the capacity within your current department to lead? So the Rental Navigator, as we've envisioned it, is a partnership between the climate programs and the housing programs at the City of Olympia. Exactly what form it takes or what specifically how it runs is something that we would be developing during the next phase of work, which is developing the pilot implementation plan. It could take shape in a lot of different ways. One of the ways might be connecting with the rental registry, but if there's no rental registry, there are other ways that we can stand this program up to make it run. I guess this leads to another question I had. I believe that any housing receives a subsidy, we already have a record of where those units are, correct? I would have to. Oh, that might be a question for later. Yeah. So I guess my question is leading to more of a statement that I really, my wish, hopefully it would be the wish of everybody, would be for these $350,000 to really be focused on energy upgrades for the affordable housing that we already know about, and we have a relationship, and they're already vetted as far as we know that that's where the greatest need is. And so that's just my preference for these dollars going forward. I know that there's really a lot of flexibility, which is also pretty cool. So anybody else have any other questions? Councilmember Parsley?
The use of these funds, is there an intention? I know, unlike a grant, a prize is not necessarily strings attached. Is there an intention that these funds will be used as a mechanism to get phase 2 going?
Yes, so the goal is to use these funds to help us continue through the different phases of DOE really, they called it a co-opetition, where they're cooperating with all of the teams. They want the teams cooperating with each other. And so there's no select down during each of the subsequent phases. So if we meet the requirements of each phase and showing progress in developing our concept proposal, then it's likely that we'll continue to win future prize funding, pending funding availability from DOE for future rounds of this. But yeah, the intent would be to develop a program that's aligned with the objectives of the proposal that we submitted. One of the pieces of that, though, was that there's a lot of federal funding and state funding becoming available for energy upgrades, and our $350,000 award will not go very far in doing upgrades. And so the way we envisioned it is that we provide that technical support and the connection to access those other federal funds, and really filling in some gap funding where it's necessary, and providing kind of that administrative piece so to help folks connect with all of the funding that's already out there or will soon be available.
Yeah, the president had a press conference this morning announcing, I forget how many more $1 billion he's going to allocate towards energy upgrades for affordability for low-income families. So it's good news. Anything else? All right. So we have a motion and a second to adopt tonight's consent calendar. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Moving
Mayor,
on.
point
Yeah.
of order.
Sure.
I just had a question. Are we going to come back and respond to public comment after the later session? Because I feel like we had some new folks tonight, and in a large number for us, that it would be good to just take a moment to acknowledge what they came to say.
Okay, so
I want to make sure we're going to provide space for that. And
absolutely.
I won't take us that way.
Yeah, it's been so long, like I said, since we've had more commenters than we had time in the very beginning of the meeting. What we've done in the past to make it kind of like, so you get the full picture, is we've made responses or questions for staff after we've completed all of the public comment. I can entertain, if there's desire here, to make some comments at this point, because by the time we get to the second phase of public comment, it'll be quite late tonight. So, Councilmember Nguyen?
Maybe we could refrain from speaking on item 6A and address the rest of the commenters.
Yeah, that's a great idea. Yeah, like that. So if anybody wants to respond to our public commenters tonight, exempting item 6A, because we're going to be discussing that in depth later on tonight, that's great. So anybody want to go?
No, you can go first.
Councilmember Nguyen?
So since we were not touching item 6A at the moment, I really appreciate the folks that have come here, some that have come here for the first time, to speak about the tragedy that's happening in Gaza right now. And also want to recognize that it's a really big thing to do, to spend your night this way and to come and speak in public comment, and with all of these people here, with a dais that's elevated in front of you, and it takes for some a different sort of comfortability to do that. And so I just really want to appreciate that. There's so many emotions when you're talking about this. There's all of the ones that are very sort of self-centered, like, wait, what? Of course I care about people. We're sitting here, we're spending our night this way too. Like, of course we're trying to, you hear that the rental housing or possible rental registry is before us tonight, and we got a lot of people that are feeling away about that. You know, there's all these different things to go through. We have a report out, just a small one about climate. That's a big deal. And so we have all these things before us that impact Olympians here right now and that we are trying to work on. And then there's all of the rest of the world, right? There's all of those big things that are happening. And so I do appreciate you taking the time. And for some, I think Emily has left, but coming back again to say, hey, you should really say something about this. You should do something, even though we are a small local government that for the most part, is focused on the issues in front of us that are before Olympians now. But what we're hearing tonight, I think, from Olympians is that whatever power we do have, whatever privilege we do hold, we should move that upward. I really appreciate when folks come with possible solutions, with things, with suggestions at least to look at. So I will, and I feel like my council mates will too, but I'll let them speak for themselves. But look at some past resolutions. I told Emily I was going to do that last week. I still intend to continue. And then also, I heard that possible support for HR 3101, and then another one for HR 786. Really, really appreciate that, and then the resolution overall. I'm not sure what it will look like, but I will work with my colleagues to form, to hopefully form. We don't do things alone. We do things together. Some sort of responses and figure out what makes sense for our city and how we can push that pressure upward, like you were saying. So. Yeah, it's your comments. I think there was like at least 10 of you. Your comments and the variety of things that you said really, it reminds us to take a moment from business as usual and recognize the humanity. And I saw a lot of kind of tearing up around the room and a lot of heartfelt thoughts. And so while some of it was hard to hear, things like having a spine and stuff, we got to kind of like look through that and not get defensive, though it can be hard sometimes, and realize that, maybe we're not a big federal government. We don't really play in international waters too much, but maybe there's something we can do. So I appreciate these smart suggestions brought forward, and I'll explore them. Thanks.
Thank you. Councilmember Cooper, followed by Councilmember Parsley, followed by Mayor Pro Tem Gilman.
Thank you, Mayor Selby. I really appreciate us going back. For me, it's good to have this conversation before we move into our agenda, just because it can give us the headspace. I think it's really important, and I wanted to make sure that these folks, 10 of them exactly, felt heard. It's a big number actually for us to have talking about one topic, not reading the same message over and over again, and focus on the global humanity and how we can come together as human beings. I think is what I heard. And the hard part about this is all of the politics and long-term history, and like trying to clear the picture of what you want to say while doing right by friends and family who are on all sides of the issue. I think everybody agrees that no one should be dying, though, and especially the innocent. And so how can we create a statement that brings our equity and our commitment to peace in the Olympia way to the table? I would love to, be a part of something like that.
All right, thank you. Next, Councilmember Parsley, followed by Mayor Pro Tem Gilman.
I have to, thank Councilmember Cooper and the mayor for letting us address this, because it is emotional. You can't read the news without feeling the impact. And when I belong to some Physicians Without Borders, and hearing that they're doing surgery without anesthesia just made me, as a medical professional, sick to my stomach. There's a lot of death going on, and I have no problem with working with my council mates, looking through the resolutions that have been put out there that allow us to match our values as a city and put forward a ceasefire resolution. It makes sense to me, but I also think we need to look at what we can do, and as Councilmember Nguyen said, from our little hamlet, push something upward. But absolutely.
Thank you. And last I have Councilmember Gilman, or Mayor Pro Tem Gilman.
I'll take either one. First, I appreciated Michael Cade coming in to elevate another partnership that we've had with the Scale Up and the other small business, both incubating and helping people grow programs over the last several years. I'm really proud of that, and I think that's part of our ability to be resilient through the pandemic with the businesses downtown. So I wanted to appreciate that. Thank you to the folks who spoke for peace and a ceasefire. That the idea that we should use council power to take the issue of peace to the top, I think, makes sense. And we try to be judicious about how often we weigh in on issues that are way beyond the city. But I think it's the right time to join the congressional staffers and the State Department employees who both have recently offered dissenting letters calling for an immediate ceasefire. And I also would be proud to send to Cori Bush a letter saying that we support her House Resolution 786 and want her and her co-sponsors to have traction. Thanks.
Thank you. All right, so I think we're ready to move on now. We've done consent count. What? Oh, you are, okay, I'm so sorry. Councilmember Payne.
Yes, so that's my bad, Madam Mayor. I initially said that I would not speak this evening, but nevertheless, I am going to, because I feel like there is a very important voice that is missing in the room in this conversation. As the only Jewish person on this council, the day after, on October 8th, I saw in our community that our community was standing in solidarity with the Palestinian people instantly. So my question is, how much of this is about the state of Israel's response? I did not see any people in our chambers demanding that the hostages that Hamas still has be returned. I am witnessing people in this chamber tonight blaming members of the city council for not acting on a resolution that would essentially be one of many that I'm not sure would move the needle in one direction or another, because we are talking about geopolitical, complicated matters. And frankly, it is Hamas's fault that we are here. And I feel that it needs to be said publicly. I understand that the state of Israel has a right-wing government that is not in line with the city of Olympia's values. And in fact, they're not even in line with the majority of American Jews or Jews around the world. But I feel that we conflate these conversations. And frankly, I feel that we need to not do that. We are falling prey to the intentions of this terrorist organization that wants us to conflate these issues and to join them in their efforts to hate the state of Israel. And it is very difficult to watch. I see it happening. And there was a ceasefire on October 6th, and Hamas broke it. And so my question is, when is, if we call for a ceasefire, when is the ceasefire going to be broken again? In 10 years, 20 years? How much longer? That being said, I do recognize that there is horrible violence. And in fact, I would argue that Hamas knew that there would be. They intentionally attacked when they had a right-wing conservative as their leader. And that should tell you something. They knew that Israel would respond with force. And so I want to be the person on this dais and in this room to offer another voice, that we also have a very active Jewish community here who is listening to all of these words tonight, begging for somebody to recognize how this all started, where this came from, and frankly, for somebody to speak up about the hostages that we want back. And so with that being said, I am happy to explore and consider language around what a potential resolution could look like. Obviously, we know that civilian casualties on any side is always something that should be condemned, but it is much more complicated, and I will not simply allow us to dismiss that simply for the sake of trying to make it seem like we need to take a specific side because that's just what we need to do in America is fall on a binary scale. It is much more complicated. It is, and we should approach it as such. And so I just want to thank you, Madam Mayor, and the council for giving me the space and the time to process this. And I will be happy to work with all of you on what a potential resolution could look like. Thank you.
So I have to respond to our mayor-elect, Payne. That took so much courage. And that is a voice that we're not hearing. And we need to hear all voices. So I thank you for coming, but I also thank you for representing an unrepresented group up here in many ways. And just gratitude. Thank you. Councilmember Cooper.
Yeah, I want to echo that because it needs to be heard, and honestly, why I was cagey about where I am, because I don't know where I am, because it's really hard to understand geopolitical issues other than I know, people should be in their homes sleeping at night and not have danger of violence, and so on all sides of the conversation. So I'd love to partner with you and maybe some of another council member and our staff to work on how to get it right. I love that term, mayor-elect, as well, so I just want to say that out loud again.
I had to get that in there. Councilmember Parsley, and then we're going to need to move on.
Thank you, Mayor-elect. I appreciate that. And when I said that a ceasefire should exist within our values are not to support hate, whether it be anti-Semitism or Islamophobia. Sorry, had trouble saying that. I absolutely agree the language should be carefully crafted. I'm for ceasefire and I'm for peace. That is what I'm for, okay? And I agree with Mayor-elect Payne.
Thank you, Councilmember Nguyen.
Let's figure out how to say all of that, okay? We don't want people to die. We don't want there to be anti-Semitism. We don't want there to be Islamophobia. We will figure it out. There is a lot of emotions, and this is a room of a lot of emotions. It sways very sad to very joyful, and I also, while I'm proud of everyone that's spoken up tonight, even in opposition of the rental registry. It is, but obviously there's a lot of thoughts on this dais, so let's get together and figure out what we're going to say. Thanks.
All right, we good to move on? All right, we have 3 public hearings this evening and different sign-up sheets for all of those. Most of them are going to be in person, I believe. So we're just going to tee up item 5A, and that is a public hearing on a proposed designation of certain additional residential areas for the purposes of the multifamily tax exemption. And I've got Darian Lightfoot, our Director of Housing and Homeless Response, to explain what we are going to be opening a hearing about.
Hello, my name is Darian Lightfoot, Director of Housing and Homeless Response, and tonight I will be giving a presentation on the proposed changes to the multifamily tax exemption program. And kicking off the public hearing, I want to talk about that tonight is primarily for the boundaries. That is how our ordinance is set up, is that it is triggered for a public hearing when we're looking to adjust the boundaries of the multifamily tax exemption. However, I will be going over all of the changes to the program, so folks in the public hearing can speak to everything, and those will be taken into consideration and brought to council on December 12th for a further discussion at another business item. So here we go.
Magic. Is it on?
It's on.
You need to cast a spell on it.
Try this.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
Need a good old-fashioned mouth. How's that work, Kelly? Okay.
Oh, no.
Okay. Cool. Great start.
So you know what? It's doing closed captioned. Is that what you want?
Wow. Sure. Did I do that? Did I turn this on?
I don't know what you
Oh
did.
my gosh.
Yes, you
Okay,
did.
here we go. Okay, so I'm going to, are they gonna be distracting? Doesn't matter. Okay. So first, I'm gonna talk about the history and the intent of the multifamily tax exemption, the state of housing, the program recommendations, and then next steps of the MFT. Okay. So the multifamily tax exemption is a statewide exemption that was adopted in 1995. It started as a 10-year exemption and didn't have any affordability associated with it. It was just a 10-year exemption with a goal to incentivize density in urban centers. And in the early 90s is when the US really started to see a decline in our housing productions. For the past 3 decades, we've started to know a deep decrease, but it was in the early 90s when the state recognized that housing production is not keeping up with population growth. So an exemption was adopted in order to incentivize density. And then in 2007 is when the exemption split between an 8-year and a 12-year. And the 12-year exemption is the one that really targeted towards affordability. In 2021, Washington State looked at the multifamily tax exemption, or MFTE, and really started to make their program more robust, dedicated program manager to the exemption, and then formed a statewide focus group, producing manuals and draft ordinances, templates, really expanding the reporting criteria. So the state saw the MFTE as a benefit to the full community and wanted to move it forward and allow local jurisdictions to have autonomy on what that would look like. Olympia adopted the exemption in 1997. Between 97 and 96, so during that 10-year exemption, we had 7 projects. There's currently 56 cities throughout Washington that have an adopted MFTE ordinance. And then in 2009 is when the city amended our MFTE to have that 8-year and 12-year exemption. There weren't any projects until 2014 taking advantage of that 8-year and 12-year due to the recession, but now we have 15 active projects with over 700 units that have been developed using the MFTE as an incentive. So just highlighting the intent, again, the intent of the exemption is to incentivize density. It is to look at potentially hard to develop areas, allowing a city to target different neighborhood centers or urban centers and offer an exemption for development. And here is what Commerce has written as their goals of the exemption. Okay, so talking about housing needs in the city of Olympia. I talk about this at most of our presentations, but we need many, many units. By 2045, Thurston County needs 50,000 additional units in order to keep up with the pace, and the city of Olympia needs 12,000 more units. And so the MFTE is a tool. It is one way that we're able to address these needs. Currently, we're permitting around 350 units per year. In order to meet that 12,000 unit mark, we need 600 permitted units per year. And so we need to find ways to be creative, incentivize development, and work really hard to meet those 12,000 units by 2045. We're really kicking off the housing element of the comp plan right now. So we have to outline how by 2045, we're going to have these additional units in our community. And the MFT is a tool in the ability to do that. I just have a graph here breaking down those units by AMI. So not only do we have the 12,000 units that we need, but this is a graph to show in what area median income we need those units. And I just want to highlight that half of those are market rate. I don't know a person that talks about the need for affordable housing more than this guy, but we also need market rate housing. We need units of all income levels, and the MFTE is a way that we can target market rate housing to be developed with 10% of my work, and 90% can be targeted towards a lower AMI that just takes so much more work in order to get online. So this is a tool in order to meet this full spectrum need. Okay, so we developed these recommendations through a series of work throughout the past couple of years. There was a study conducted by Echo Northwest last year, and those results were submitted by the in December of last year, and we built off those in order to create the current program that we have before you tonight. I was on the statewide MFTE focus group, and it was a large majority of those 56 communities throughout Washington met every other week. We talked about how we could improve the program, what that looked like in their jurisdictions, how people were adapting it in order to meet the needs of their community, and sharing resources, and it was incredibly beneficial. Out of that, I was able to see Tacoma, Vancouver, and Redmond, and how they were using their exemption and how we could use that in Olympia and take their positive outcomes and some of their ordinance language and some of their program materials and pivot them to a space that fit the needs of our community. All right, moving on to the program recommendations. So first, like I said, tonight is a public hearing to focus primarily on the boundary expansion. We can talk about all of the elements, but that is what the ordinance requires tonight. So I want to look at the current boundary. This is the current boundary of the MFT, downtown, east side, west side. The specific streets were provided to all of you, but this is the current map that's within our code. And the boundary is being proposed to be expanded to these 3 geographic areas. So the downtown, east side, west side, just how it current is, but looking to expand the west side around the Capitol Mall Triangle and also further down the Martin Way corridor, and this is to Lilly. There's also a recommendation that there are 4 neighborhood centers that are included in this proposal. And like I said, the MFT has to be targeted towards urban centers so that the language has to be specific. And here are the 4 proposed that have opportunities to develop that we would like to target the MFT towards those 4 specific areas as well. So moving on to the other elements of the MFT that we have proposed, I just want to start off with saying that we've heard a lot from the community that the MFT should be targeted towards affordable housing development, and I absolutely agree. There are 2 lines of business when it comes to housing development. There's for-profit market rate development, and then there's affordable housing development. And the deeper the AMI is on the affordable housing, the more of a niche market it is to fit. So there's a ton of public funding and tax credits and public support that is needed in order for low-income housing to be able to come across the finish line. So we want to look at the 8-year and the 12-year as somewhat of 2 different programs. The 8-year can continue to serve and meet the market rate need, and the 12-year can be more of an affordable housing development tool. And so we're proposing that in order to receive the 12-year exemption, 100% of the units need to be at 80% AMI. This is a huge jump for how the current exemption is. Currently, for the 12-year, in order to receive the exemption, 20% of the units have to be at 110% AMI. So this is a really big shift, and we see this as being able to stack our tools of the exemption with the 12-year with a lot of the other exemptions that the city, or a lot of the other incentives that the city currently has. So like I said, the 12-year targeting towards affordable housing, the 8-year in all of the geographic areas, we are proposing that there is a fee in lieu. And so what that means is that in the downtown and in the east side, if the project is opting out of creating affordable housing, then there would be acquired 5% fee in lieu of opting out of affordable housing development. So 5% of the exemption would be paid back to the city, and it would operate with the same sort of requirements as our home fund. So any sort of local match, potentially for a tax credit, going into our land banking work, anything that pushes the needle on a lower AMI affordability, that fee in lieu would go into the fund. For the west side, it's a 25% fee in lieu, operating as the same as the geographic areas. But the reason that the west side is higher is because under our analysis, rents are higher on the west side in terms of development costs. So that fee in lieu can be higher on the west side as opposed to the downtown or the east side. We're looking to increase the application fee. We have the lowest application fee in the state. And improve our communications and marketing. That's a lot of the feedback we hear too. What's happening with projects? What year are they on in their exemption? How many units are under the exemption? So we really just want to increase our performance measures in communications and marketing. It's currently been operating as more as a passive program, and we feel that if we can become more engaged, then we can better use it as a tool and operate as an exemption inside of our affordable housing portfolio. Other pieces that we are proposing within the exemption is land use really encouraged us to look thoroughly at displacement. Once those 12-year exemptions are up, then that property owner could potentially increase the rent from that 80% AMI to above market rate, which really impacts displacement and people being able to stay in their unit. And so because of that, we're proposing a 17-year contract, so that requires the developer to operate within the exemption for 12 years, but for in the 5 years after, only a 7% increase could be required on the rent. So this really hopefully will lower the opportunity for displacement, and rents couldn't be really hiked up on that 13th year. So looking to address impacts of displacement. The next piece, currently we're in the middle of a housing study, and this is to look more at opportunities for affordable home ownership. With that, we're asking that it be analyzed if we could include tenant opportunities to purchase within all of our MFTE projects. So 8-year or 12-year, if the owner goes to sell, it would be a requirement that they go to the tenants first, offering an opportunity for the tenants to come together and to purchase the unit. So that's being evaluated right now. We're also proposing that the 20-year exemption be included. That is for home ownership opportunities. This would be a 20-year exemption, again, for any nonprofit looking to develop affordable home ownership. For example, our Boulevard project is within the neighborhood center that would be impacted by this exemption. So just a project of what it would need to look like to receive this exemption. And then again, clear performance measures and coming back every 5 years to report out what that would look like. 3 highlights that I want to mention. The first is a Martin Way corridor study. You all heard that this is a study session a few months ago, along with the Capitol Mall Triangle study, both that are happening on the east and west side. And in those studies, our consultants are using the MFT as a baseline in order to develop housing in these areas. The Triangle specifically needs between 1,500 and 3,000 units of housing in that area, and our consultants see this as the first layer in order to meet those units' needs. Same with the Martin Way corridor study. So this is a tool that our consultants are really relying on to meet those housing need targets. And just to say that we have a member of our housing team that goes to our pre-sub meetings now and talks about the MFTE and entices developers to look at this more creatively. Maybe it wasn't in their portfolio before, but finding ways to bring them in and have them play in this arena with us and see ways that they could see themselves in the affordable housing development realm. So that's just another piece that I wanted to add, that we're really trying to pivot this as an affordable housing incentive tool. Next steps, we're continuing to develop the affordable housing development incentives. We have one together right now and using that as a communications tool and including the MFT as a piece of that. This is the public hearing, and we're looking to come back to you all on December 12th as an other business item, and we can go more into detail if you have questions after tonight, adopt the changes, and then come back to land use yearly to talk about data and performance measures of the exception. Thank you.
Thank you. Darian's available for questions if anybody has anything to clarify. Councilmember Cooper.
Thank you, Mayor Selby, and thank you, Darian, to you and your team for spending so much time on this with both the community and with some of us as individuals. I wanted to ask a couple questions, and you might have, I apologize if you answered them at land use, but just to make sure. So can you get an MFT tax exemption for a conversion? Like if you switch an office building or a hotel to multifamily housing?
Yes, if it's a certain amount of units and it's not displacing any people that are living there already. So office to residential, yes, and has to be 4 or more units.
Okay, and I was just, it came to mind because of the conversion that's being proposed in the master plan development on Courthouse Hill and how many other buildings are up there that could possibly be converted, whether we considered that area. And then similarly, I'm curious, on the other side of the map, why we didn't go all the way to College. There's a couple of hotels from Lilly to College at the city limits, but there's also large parking lots and a whole bunch of single-story development. So kind of those 2 areas, did we consider them, or were they on the table for this conversation?
I'm not not sure. I know that because of how it has to be designated as an urban center, we really targeted at a street to street from downtown to east side, and the same with west side. I'm unsure why it wasn't expanded that far in our analysis. This is where it ended, maybe looking at potential developable land, I'm unsure.
Okay, and I can see that for the distinction for Courthouse Hill, but would certainly like to at least understand why the Lily Road stopping point as we move into towards adoption.
All right, I've got Councilmember Parsley, followed by Mayor Pro Tem Gilman, followed by Councilmember Madrone.
I have a quick question, and I've read this a couple times, so I think I'm missing the 5% fee in lieu. Is that 5% of the cost or 5% of the tax?
5% of the exemption.
Okay, of the exemption. That's
The
what I needed to know. And on the 12th, are we going to have just a little snapshot of at least one slide that includes, because this is one of many incentives that we can just have listed on that slide on the 12th, so people can see we're not just looking at MFTE.
Yeah, great. Yeah, I can bring our whole slew of exemptions on how we're looking to kind of stack these and how we see this play in the fuller picture, but I'm happy to do that.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Great suggestion. Mayor Pro Tem Gilman, followed by Councilmember Madrone.
Thank you, Mayor Selby. I'm thinking about how we often talk about wanting to make data-driven decisions. And from my experience, this has been one of the least data-populated conversations over the last couple of years. And it would be very helpful to me, my hopes for a staff report as we make an informed decision about whether to expand the program would be an estimate of that potential expansion and accounting of the current exempted projects, the cost per household for the tax shift if we were to continue to have the deferred taxes paid by everybody else, a staffing and administrative costs plan, and some estimates of the amount of dollars that would be generated to affordable housing. I think that with those sorts of plans or estimates in hand, we would be able to make a smarter consideration of the program. And then the one specific question I have this evening is, what would the process be to move from the tax shift to the city and the schools and the other taxing districts foregoing the revenue if we were to elect to not have the tax shift?
I'm unsure. I hadn't heard of another jurisdiction opting out of the tax shift, but I could connect with the county assessor's office to see if that's an option.
It wouldn't be us alone. It was a county decision. The county elected 20-some years ago when the MFTE was created to run at this, but other counties around the state have the jurisdictions forego the revenue rather than having it spread across the other taxpayers. So, anyhow, I'd like us to know what the options are there.
Thank you. Councilmember Madrone.
Yeah, and I plan to have more, comprehensive statements about this when it comes for a decision as the chair of land use. But I wanted to get at the question that Mayor Pro Tem Gilman just asked about tax shift. And I'm curious, I see that we have our finance director hiding in the corner over there. And I'm curious, Aaron, if this is something that you can speak to, and maybe we'll hear more about it in December.
Good evening, Council. Aaron B. Miller with the Finance Department. So yes, we will have more information on that in December. Speaking about the tax shift, there is a tax shift. And I don't want to say that it's a significant number or not a significant number, because the significance is in the eye of the beholder. One of the things that we're going to try to demonstrate, and one of the things that's very difficult to demonstrate, is that the decision that this council makes for how we as a district incorporate this MFTE resonates to all the other districts. So if we have a tax shift in a property in the city of Olympia, that tax shift also occurs at the county. It also occurs at maybe another district that the property is in for a library district, cemetery district, whatever it is. So there are rings around this. And so it's very difficult to say that a household is going to increase, their levy rate, their cost per $1,000 of assessed valuation will increase by this, exact dollar amount. How we plan to approach it is really talking about the city as a district and what it means for us, and not trying to necessarily make guesses about what it means on other districts. But there is an impact from other districts, and it's not a single year impact, obviously. It's every year that exemption goes on for. To answer Mayor Pro Tem's question, yes, there is that other option. I am not as well versed in it as I might be. I'm not all that well versed in the tax shift option either, but I do actually have a call into the assessor's office to talk about that, which I can invite Darian to, because that has the same implications. So I believe if we move and we do an exemption and we don't shift the costs, I'm not sure that I think that same pattern runs through all the taxing districts. And so that would have an impact on their revenues as well. So it absolutely would, have our revenues would go down from a property tax perspective in that case. And so we'll try to bring what we can on that.
And did I hear you correctly that you're going to bring some numbers around like the estimated impact, at least for households in Olympia?
Yeah, we are definitely going to be able to have that, and we know which properties already are exempted, working with the assessor to try to make sure that we understand the assessed valuation of those, and from that we'll be able to look at the impact of a shift or hopefully of a reduction of property tax revenue.
Okay, that would be really helpful because there's a lot of, guesstimates out there in the community. And so it would be good to know precisely what that is, and so that we can weigh, that cost to folks in the community to the, benefits of this program, which extend way beyond just housing units. It's the urban density goals that we have to try to get new development in places where it causes the least amount of harm and strengthens our core areas. So, okay, well, I'll look forward to more details in December then.
Great.
Thanks.
All right, are we all good and ready to open the?
One question.
Okay, Councilmember Parsley.
I forgot to ask this, and it's of you, Darian. I just want to make sure I heard that correctly, and I think this is worthy of being repeated. Did you say that 50% of the needed stock is going to be in market rate housing?
Yes. Of the 12,000 units, 6,000 are 100 plus AMI.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And Councilmember Cooper.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask if the Mayor Pro Tem or Aaron could send us some details around this county decision around deferral or not, and where that decision lied and when, and if we can get some of that to the council as soon as possible. It would be really helpful for the conversation rather than saving it for public hearing. Thank you.
All right, thank you for that. And at this time, I just want to let everyone know we have 18 people signed up for the MFTE for tonight. So as chair of the meeting, it's under my discretion how much time to allow per commenter. And so normally we offer 3 minutes, but because of the amount of people signed up, I'm going to make it 2 minutes today. So if you have to modify it on the fly, I'll honor that. But we have 2 other public hearings plus a very, we just have a very dense agenda, talking about density. So we are going to open the public comment, same rules as for public hearing. There'll be, if you're in person, and there's 7 people in person and 11 people on remote. So there'll be a countdown clock in chambers, and then for those commenting remotely, there'll be a countdown clock on your screen. And then I also wanted to note that there were 5 people that signed up for the general public comment, and put MFTE as their topic. And I just took the discretion again to move you onto the MFTE public hearing. So hopefully I got that all right. So I will also call it people in trios. So I'm going to start with Mike McCormick, followed by Janae Huber, followed by Kathy McCormick. Oh, I'm opening the hearing.
Mayor, members of the council, my name is Mike McCormick. I'm a longtime resident of the city. First of all, totally off topic, congratulations on the holiday lights. They look spectacular. You've done a great job. Amazing, magic, I love it. Keep it up. I'm testifying in favor of the multifamily tax exemption. With the increased public emphasis on housing affordability and homelessness, your update of your comp plan, the changes in state legislation that's going to make it much more challenging to meet the responsibilities. I think it's absolutely essential that you have all of the tools in your toolbox. I do have some experience and understand your budgeting. I know the limitations, particularly working with property tax. This is an important, proven tool. It's produced over 700 units within the city. We need to do better. Affordable housing is expensive. There has to be a resource. The fact that you're going to have a monitoring program, you're going to evaluate it, and I'm confident if it needs to be adjusted, that's something you will do. I encourage you to rapidly move forward and adopt it. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, I have Janae Huber, followed by Kathy McCormick, followed by Carrie Retland.
Good evening, Mayor Selby and members of council. Thank you for the opportunity to comment this evening. I'm here in support of the proposed changes to the multifamily tax exemption. Data in many areas of our community and really across the globe point to the need to lighten our footprint. And one of the key ways that we do that is to concentrate development in areas that are served by existing infrastructure rather than paving farms and cutting down forests. I'll just cite a couple of the data points that support your efforts to make it easier to build compact multifamily housing in the areas proposed. According to Washington State University, since 1950, Thurston County has lost more than 100,000 acres of farmland to urbanization. The policies we set for housing in Olympia have a direct impact on our ability to support healthy farms and forests in our county. We also know that Olympia needs, I thought it was 14,000 units, but apparently it's 12 additional housing units over the next 20 years. And multifamily housing is the most affordable and environmentally responsible way to meet that goal. According to the US EPA, the average multifamily unit uses half the energy of an average single-family detached home. And with the climate crisis at our doorstep, we must reduce our emissions quickly and deeply as we possibly can. Among our strategies must be to build abundant housing in areas that are walkable and served by transit. Households close to transit lines produce a quarter of the emissions of households without close access to transit. So the proposed updates to the MFTE will help us meet our housing goals, our housing affordability goals, and our climate goals, and I encourage you to vote in favor of the proposed changes. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Kathy McCormick, followed by Carrie Retland, followed by Bob Jacobs.
Hi, I'm Kathy McCormick, and I'm here to support the proposed changes to the multifamily tax exemption program. It's been almost 30 years since the city adopted a complete rewrite of its comprehensive plan using the principles in the 1990 State Growth Management Act. Both the state and Olympia plan, at its core, are about the wise use of land. The state-approved MFTE program recognizes the difficulty of changing traditional sprawl growth patterns and the difficulty of adding development, especially housing and activity centers. How little we understood 30 years ago how difficult this change in development pattern would be, nor did we understand just how much of a housing and environmental crisis would emerge. Almost 10 years ago, the city participated in a region-wide sustainable Thurston community conversation. This was the Thurston region's opportunity to check in where our plans under the GMA were going to take us over the next decades. Using the best available data, 3 years of discussion, the effort identified changes that would need to occur to get our region's definition of a sustainable environmental, social, and economic future. The core finding of the Sustainable Thurston Plan was if this region does not get the land use right, all of the other sustainable goals, environmental, social, and economic, become difficult or impossible to achieve. Thank you for the work you've been making in this update of the MFTE, and please don't get sidetracked by a in-the-weeds discussion about taxes, because if you want to see cost to the community, don't reach the land use goals and see what the costs will be to the community and the region.
Thank you. Next, I have Carrie Retland, followed by Bob Jacobs, followed by John. Can't read the last name.
Good evening, Mayor Selby, council members. I'm Carrie Retland in First Street Southeast and formerly staff to you all on housing and other matters. Big supporter of the staff proposal, both on the map and proposed changes to the MFTE program. This program has, as you've heard already, substantial public benefits for our community. I wanted to focus a little bit on some observations I've seen on just rental costs in our downtown, since we have some case studies available to us. They demonstrate that the benefits of the MFTE are passed on to our renters in our community. So one non-MFTE apartment building downtown at Views on 5th currently is advertising a studio unit at $1,550 a month for 327 square feet. An 8-year MFTE unit down the street over at 123 4th is renting for $1,385 a month for 467 square feet, also a studio. Less money, bigger studio. But I realize too that that building is over, so maybe not a great comparison. Another 8-year MFTE building at just above Row on Percival Landing is renting for $1,300 a month for 426 square feet. That's $250 a month savings for 100 square feet more. So again, I think these savings are in the short term being passed on to renters in our downtown. This is a huge public benefit, and I encourage your support. And thank you for your support for this program in the past.
Thank you. I've got Bob Jacobs, followed by John, and then Greg Laura.
Bob Jacobs, 720 Governor Stevens. There's an old saying that is applicable here. You can put lipstick on a pig, but it's still a pig. The MFTE is a fraud, purporting to be a way to get additional housing developed, while actually it just forces us taxpayers to subsidize rich developers, their rich investors, and rich land speculators. You must be aware of this by now. But for some reason, the city persists in preserving and even, as here, expanding the MFTE. My recommendation is to take no action on this proposal. Rather, scrap the entire MFTE program except for existing contracts. Reverse Robin Hood programs should have no place in Olympia. In addition, I recommend the following. First, stop saying that the MFTE is, quote, effective or, quote, successful in producing additional housing, which the staff report and ordinance do. Don't be part of the big lie campaign. Second, stop subsidizing market rate housing. This will require increasing growth cost charges like impact fees and utility connection fees, which contain hidden subsidies. Third, invest only in permanently affordable housing for people in need, like you're doing in Martin Way. No more temporarily affordable housing with cliffs at the end of the fixed periods, which leave recipients out in the cold. That would be a good start toward rationalizing our city's housing policies. Thank you.
Thank you. Next I have John. I'm sorry, I couldn't read your name. Greg Laura. Is there a John? Starts with a D? No, John D. All right, we'll go to Greg Laura.
Hello, I'll be brief. I just wanted to express support for the multifamily tax exemption on behalf of Habitat and our development. I think it's going to help a lot with bringing permanent affordable home ownership to the area, and it'll help us to build more homes for those in need. Thank you.
Thank you. So now we're going to switch to our remote testimony. Like I said, I have 11 people, and I folded in the people that had also signed up for public comment regarding MFTE. So the first person I have is Walter Jorgensen, followed by Larry Jezza, followed by Peter Sanderson.
Walt is traveling.
While we're waiting for Mr. Jorgensen, I'm just going to read the list of names. Oh, there he is. You're, I believe, muted. Mr. Jorgensen, yeah, there you go.
Got it, okay. Thank you. And thanks to Councilmember Clark Gilman and Planning Official Tim Seth for the very informative maps. I have to ask, where were these maps when we needed them? In other words, when we were formulating our comments. I got them at 3:30 this afternoon. The city, that's you, began this whole tax exemption nonsense about 10 years ago. And it's always been the city's contention that they were giving up some tax revenue by exempting certain properties from property tax on their buildings. But that's not the case, is it? Through small, by comparison, increases in property taxes for the rest of us, you, the city, are recouping your gift to some new development by collecting just enough more from us to make up the difference. Actually, the assessor does it for you because political subdivisions like the city don't set property tax rates. The assessor does. So we, the taxpayers, are making your generosity possible by digging down a little deeper. You aren't. But wait, you aren't done. Now you have to tell the developers that on some of their properties, they may have to pay an in lieu of fee, up to 25% of the full exemption that we already paid for. Of course, it's not really in lieu of anything tangible. In other words, unlike Seattle, where developers are relieved of having to provide affordable housing on site by paying in lieu of fee, here in Olympia, they were never asked to do that. So I guess the fee is just, quite frankly, the city's kickback share of the tax the developer doesn't have to pay. Do taxpayers know that generally when you exempt property taxes, you're taking away property tax revenue from all the entities on the tax bill? Well, same here. Oh, I guess I'm not done, but I'm done now. Okay.
Thank you. Next, we have Larry Jezza, followed by Peter Sanderson, followed by Melissa Allen.
Larry's traveling.
I'm going to ask for the whole 3 minutes. Thank you. You based your policy on the economic.
Excuse me, Mr. Jezza, that's not your prerogative. I will cut you off at 2. Thank you. You better start now.
I thought you said you'd find some discretion because you changed the rules last minute.
Nope.
Okay, well, you're based on your policy on an economic Northwest study using econometric models that never looked at the facts on the ground. Let's take a look at the real buildings who received the MFTE. First example, 321 Legion Way. This 36-unit building's value went from $5.1 million in 2018 to $14.2 million in 2023, a $9 million, 178% increase in 5 years. This building had $138,000 of its taxes shifted to Olympia taxpayers by the MFTE, a taxpayer-paid subsidy of $3,832 per unit, a place where a one-bedroom rents for $1,600. And I want you to hear this. If we use that $138,000 directly, we could make 10 of those buildings units affordable for families living at HUD's very low income level of 50% of AMI, and subsidize the remaining 26 units to the low income level of 80% of AMI. Instead, we get market rates. Second example, 500 Columbia Place. Started in 2021, the MFTE, it went from 31.6 million to 70.6 million in 2023. 2 years, $39 million increase, 124% value increase in 2 years. Taxpayers are being billed $704,000 to pay for the developer's taxes. This accounts, when you calculate it, to 6 cents on our current Olympia property tax rate of $1.83 comes from this one building, because the MFTE means regular property owners are paying for jurisdiction's taxes that the developer would have paid. Each unit is getting an annual subsidy of over $2,500 per unit to help pay for their waterfront views. A one-bedroom unit is currently being offered at $3,721 a month. We don't need to be subsidizing that. Let's do it right. Let's have, okay, I'll submit it in writing, but I'm really disappointed that you didn't work with the statement that you made earlier when you changed the amount of time.
Thank
I
you.
would beg you
We would
to
appreciate
allow
you
us to have the
submitting
time
your
to-
statement to us by email. Thank you. Moving on, Mr. Peter Sanderson, followed by Melissa Allen, followed by Judy Barden.
Peter is no longer signed in.
All right, we got Melissa Allen, followed by Judy Barden, followed by Robert Vadas Jr.
Melissa's traveling.
I'm here. Can you see me? You can't see me either. Okay, quick. Okay, there we go. I'm Melissa Allen. I live on Prospect Avenue on the northeast side of Olympia. My first thing was to comment that if you want public support for things, you've got to give us more information. And this projection of how it will affect our property taxes is important. We will vote for property taxes that benefit the community in a sense of people who cannot survive in the current rental market. But we don't have enough information to even make that decision. Second is that I want to talk specifically about the area around the San Francisco and Bethel Street area, which is projected to be one of the neighborhood centers in which MFTEs can exist. They're taking what was originally a very small center area with no parking anywhere, and we're just in the midst of building a neighborhood site on it, just benches and planters kind of thing. And now we're hearing that it's going to go into massive development. And you add that on the top of the changes recently about where there will no longer be off-street parking requirements for multifamily units. I don't know how, it's just going to change the character of the whole thing. And we started this thing because of this effort, because of the comprehensive plan that said work together, create local neighborhood centers for people to gather. And it's entirely out of hand. And I think that will do it for me. Thank you.
Thank you. Judy Barden, followed by Robert Vadas Jr., followed by Janine L.
Judy's traveling.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
Sorry.
I'm opposed to the expansion of the MFTE. 4 neighborhood centers are slated for the MFTE expansion. However, the neighborhood center work has been put on hold. Without finishing this work, the city has gone ahead and targeted these neighborhood centers. This seems to be putting the cart before the horse. I want to thank the city for very quickly producing new maps of the MFTE areas, which were requested at the Council of Neighborhood Association meeting last night. These new maps are much improved. The original map had no street names, and people could not differentiate between the existing and new MFTE areas. And the neighborhood centers were only designated by stars on the map. Better maps help people understand the proposal. The city has not been transparent with the funding for the MFTE. The city does not forgo any taxes. Instead, taxes are shifted onto taxpayers. I've asked finance staff for estimates of the present tax shift and projections of what future tax shifts would be under different development scenarios. This information should have been provided for the public ahead of tonight's hearing, but it was not. I would suggest that you read Larry Jez's article published in Jolt last night. It explains in details the tax shift and how the city makes a big profit, 136%, with the newly proposed in lieu of fee, actually paid by the taxpayers. Overall, developers win, the city wins big time, and taxpayers lose. Seattle just passed Proposition 1, a very substantial housing levy. Why doesn't Olympia do the same to get truly affordable housing and scrap the MFTE? Thank you.
Thank you. Robert Vadas Jr., followed by Janine L., followed by Lisa Reiner.
Robert is traveling.
Okay, sorry. I assume you can hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. I would like to oppose the MFT, mainly because even though there's some things that seem to be in the right direction, I think it'll be a paper tiger. And the reason for that is already the 8-year tax exemption is what people are going for. The development that's going in next to me, he told me, because I gave him a heck at the public hearing, that he wasn't providing enough affordable housing. And he says, the city won't let me do it, you know? I mean, he says, it's not economical. I can't make money. And so if you really do want to promote the 12-year, you gotta downplay the 8-year. I mean, and I would go as far as what Bob Jacobs said, is it should be just gotten rid of. I mean, rich people can take care of themselves. I mean, you know, and the 80% AMA, come on. I mean, we got a lot of people poorer than that. Think of all the people that are living along I-5. You think they're at 80% AMI? No way. So if we really want to solve the problem, we have to solve the housing crisis first. And instead of rearranging chairs on the Titanic is what I think this is really coming down to. And so in sum, I would just say that if you really want to make a difference for the disadvantaged, you've got to focus on them. They shouldn't just be a side project like this is being proposed. If you really want to do something directly for them, because otherwise they're just going to still be ignored just like they already are. And I would agree with Pro Tem Clark Gilman that, you know, data are lacking, and I think this is a hypothetical that simply will fail just like everything before it. Thank you. That's it. Yeah.
Thank you. Next, I have Janine L., followed by Lisa Reiner, followed by Tevin Beckford.
Janine is not signed up.
All right, we'll go to Lisa Reiner, followed by Tevin Beckford, followed by Bev Bassett.
Lisa's traveling.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, thank you. Yes, I do not support the multifamily tax exemption. You know, the name of that, multifamily tax exemption, it's really a tax exemption for the rich developers. This is not about low-income housing. This is not housing needs for future. This is not housing needs to mitigate climate change. That has nothing to do with it. You let the developers talk in the beginning of the meeting, 3 minutes, we get 2. But the bottom line is, I've attended many of these meetings, the Capital Mall Sub-Area Plan, we discussed the multifamily tax exemption. No one in the room supported these exemptions for these rich developers. The rest of us, we the citizens of this city, will have to pay these taxes that these rich developers are not paying. And that is a lot of money, and that means the rents are going to go up. And of course they said, oh yes, one of your staff people said, there will be a tax shift because basically, the renters are not gonna be able to live here anymore because the city of Olympia is letting the rich developers not have to pay taxes, so the rest of us have to pay taxes, and nobody's gonna be able to live in this town, essentially because the taxes are gonna go up and up and up for the average person. Meanwhile, the rich developers get a write-off. This is not about climate change. This is about sticking it to the middle class, and I see it all over. I know in Capitol Mall Suburban Plan, the big issue is stormwater. If we put these 14-story high-rises or 10-story high-rises, where's the stormwater going? It's already flooding. The other day, we had a great big flood on Cooper Point Road. We had a great big flood on Black Lake Boulevard. We have floods in Ken Lake, right where you want to put this housing, and this is a farce, and this is a sham.
Thank you. Next, we have Tevin Beckford, followed by Beverly Bassett, followed by Marguerite Fleming.
Tevin is not signed in.
All right, we'll go to Beverly Bassett and then Margaret Fleming.
Bev is traveling.
I got you.
Something worse than spineless.
Hello?
Hello?
Yes. Am I speaking?
Yes, we can hear you, and the timer's about to start.
Oh, okay.
You have 2 minutes.
My name is Bev Bassett, Beverly Bassett. I live at 1218 Marion Street in the Northeast neighborhood, and I live in the heart of the Northeast neighborhood that will be affected, and I'm the Democratic Party precinct officer for this neighborhood, for this area. This area that's up for development is in the heart of the precinct. And I know this precinct, and I walk this precinct with my dogs on a daily basis. I see the people here, and the people I talk to are strongly opposed to this blatant sounding corruption of the MTFE. They don't want any part of it. They don't want any more taxes. They want you guys to do something to make their lives better and not worse. And what gives the city the right to make this change and to tax us? There hasn't been any vote on this. We haven't given our consent for it. It does nothing to address the real problems of homelessness. It's just an obvious, big, corrupt pork giveaway to rich developers. And I and the people in Precinct 223 don't want it, and we say no.
Thank you. Next, I have, our last speaker is Marguerite Fleming.
Marguerite is not signed in.
All right, that concludes all the people that were signed up for the public hearing. And I do allow people in chambers, if there's anybody that is so moved to participate in the public hearing on the MFTE program, they can come up and speak now if they haven't already. Is there anybody interested? All right, I'm going to close the hearing. And as there is no needed action this evening, this was a briefing only, this will come back forward to the council on December 12th. And I'm sure there'll be a more robust conversation. All right, we're going to move on to item 5B on our agenda, and that is the public hearing on the Community Development Block Grant Program, the 2022 Annual Report, or the CAPER, I think it's called. Yeah. And I should know that after 10 years, right? So anyhow, it's my pleasure to invite forward Anastasia Everett, who is our CDBG Program Manager in the Office of Community Vitality. And look at that smile, so vital.
Good evening, Mayor, Selby, and council members. For the record, my name is Anastasia Everett, and I am the city's Community Development Block Grant, or CDBG, Program Manager. I'm looking forward to sharing this last program year's accomplishments with you all tonight. The City of Olympia is an entitlement community for CDBG funds. We receive annual allocations to invest in our community. The program is flexible and allows each grantee to target their greatest needs. The CAPER is an annual report that the CDBG regulations require grantees to submit within 90 days of a close of a grantee's program year. CAPERs are also a way to share with the community how CDBG funding has been spent during the prior year. According to our consolidated plan, preservation of housing for low and moderate income persons is the number one, oh no, priority for our grant. Did I screw it up? Okay.
We needed that.
Thank you.
Yep, there it goes again.
Okay. Okay. Highlights from this year include participation in Energize Olympia, the lift installation at Community Youth Services Behavioral Health Facility, single-family homeowner rehabilitation with Rebuilding Together Thurston County, and the electrification of Home's first rental homes. Notable accomplishments include 17 fully subsidized heat pumps with the Energize Olympia campaign. We also partnered with subrecipients to provide rehab to 8 single-family homes within the city and 11 rental homes. The City of Olympia has partnered with Rebuilding Together Thurston County in program year 2021 and program year 2022. Due to this partnership, Rebuilding's capacity has been able to expand immensely with the infusion of the city's CDBG funds. And the city has been able to use its CDBG funds in home rehabilitation. In program year 2021, Rebuilding rehabilitated 3 homes within the city with CDBG funding. In program year 22, that number nearly tripled with 8 homes being rehabilitated. I'd like to thank Rebuilding Together for their partnership, and I look forward to continuing this important work that serves our community. And I would like to now invite Rebuilding Together's Executive Director, Kathy Johnson, up to share some highlights of City of Olympia projects in program year 22.
I'm a little shorter than Anastasia, so I'll lower the microphone. So thank you so much for inviting me here tonight. It's a great pleasure and a great honor to be here tonight. And our organization, we're part of a national organization, but we've been in Olympia since 2003. And we provide home repairs and ADA modifications for low-income homeowners who are disabled or 62 and older, or military veterans or families with young children. So any money that we get helps the people who are really marginalized in our community. So when we started in 2003, our primary emphasis was on Rebuilding Day projects, which happened 1 day a year. And as we moved along, we realized that there was a tremendous need in the community for repairs all year round. So starting in 2013, we started helping with wheelchair ramps and hot water tanks. Also saw that need continued to grow. So we, instead of just doing a hot water tank, we looked at the wraparound services for the homeowners. And so since 2013, when we started helping 4 critical repair homeowners, we have expanded to 49 in 2022, and we hope to provide at least that many this year. And the cost is going up. So like everybody else, you know, our first critical repairs were about $1,000 a homeowner. Will be over $2,500 this year. And part of that is we're providing more services. So instead of just providing a hot water tank, we're also fixing your water damaged floor. We're fixing your gutters. We're doing all sorts of services. So with support from the city, we are able to provide better services for our community. And as the person who's in the office most of the time, I'm the one who gets the phone calls and the messages of people calling saying, my hot water tank has fallen through the floor. My roof is leaking in my son's bedroom. What do I do? So it's nice with the city money to say yes to people instead of saying, no, I'm sorry, I can't help you. We can't help you. So for example, two of my favorite projects to talk about right now are plumbing. So we received a phone call from a homeowner, city resident. 4 of the residents were all disabled, living in a stick-built home. 2 were seniors, and their hot water tank had literally fallen through their floor. So calling one of our service providers, went out, fixed the hot water tank that had fallen through the floor, fixed the damage to the plumbing that had been ripped out as it fell through the floor, fixed the flooring, and oh, by the way, there's plumbing issues in the kitchen and the bathroom and the faucet. So what could have been initially maybe a $4,000 repair turned into a $12,000 repair by the time we addressed everything in the household. And we could not have done that without support from those CDBG funds. We would not have been able to help them to that level. And it was a pleasure and an honor to be able to call the city and talk to Anastasia and say, you know that original $4,000 request I had? It's not $4,000 anymore. Can you help? And so that's the kind of phone call we like to make and the answers that we get. And the homeowners were very, very grateful. I was just telling Anastasia today we had another plumbing project, which is our #1 need, where we went out to fix a drain pipe. And well, 9 plumbing leaks later in the bathroom and the subfloor ripped up, the home is preserved and protected. And that's what we do with CDBG money. The last example I want to give you tonight is Lorena, which I'm sure Anastasia and Darian have talked about. Single mom living with 3 kids in a manufactured home. And the roof was failing, the ceiling was failing, and through 6+ months of pain and money, the family is back in the home and very, very grateful. And that's the kind of work that we can do with your support. And we are extremely grateful. I just wanted to give you a couple quick statistics. I know we have time here. So residents we are helping or we've already served with CDBG money. We've served 28 people, 17 women, 11 men, including 4 children who are male, 20 who are disabled, 17 are 62 and older, 3 are veterans. The lowest income that we've served for a homeowner is $10,092 a year. Try living on $10,000 a year. I certainly couldn't do it. And 12 of the households that we've helped or are in the process of helping make less than $20,000 a year. So you are making a tremendous difference for the homeowners in our community, and we are very grateful and we look forward to your ongoing support. So thank you. Any questions for me?
Oh, sure. Thank you so much for those stories. We needed to hear something, good news like that. And you know, the beauty of the CDBG, if it's managed right like we do, is that we can leverage the small amount of dollars we get with groups like yourselves to achieve these amazing outcomes for people. So
And we are really grateful. We have a great crew of volunteers who do so much of our work at no charge.
Absolutely.
And contractor partners with discounts as well as suppliers who give us great discounts.
Wonderful.
So we can really make your money go a long way.
Well, thank you. Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
Is there any other comments from the dais at this point? All right. Just gratitude.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. I lost where I am, sorry. And I'm taller. Okay. Thank you, Kathy, for sharing your important work. Some other notable accomplishments include our first successful loan written from the Revolving Loan Fund and participation in National Community Development Week in 2023. I am also pleased to share that the City of Olympia met HUD's annual timeliness test in program year 2022. It was a really big uphill battle. I'm grateful for all of the hard work that our sub-recipient partners did to make sure they were spending down on time. And they were getting this funding into the community, making a difference under really tight timelines. So they worked really hard, and it makes a difference. So what's next is the public comment period for the CAPER ends November 16th. Tonight is the public hearing, an opportunity to provide testimony, and the CAPER is to be submitted to HUD on or before November 30th. And I'm available for questions.
Great, thank you. I was just thinking that the spend down is always kind of a nail biter. So if you need a gift certificate for a manicure, just let me know. Ah. All right. So any questions from the dais? All right. So we're going to go right into the opening the public hearing on the CDBG Program Year 2022 Annual Report. I have one person signed up, Debbie Carey. She should be in the chambers. Maybe no. Oh, you're good? All right. Are you sure you're the only one? All right, well, thank you for ceding your time. So is there anyone else that would like to speak to the CDBG 2022 Annual Report? Going. Hearing is closed. Thank you again so much. All right, we're going to move on to item 5C, which is another public hearing. And that is on this is an easy one, the 2024 proposed operating budget. All right, so we're going to turn the podium over to Jay Burney, our city manager, to go over where we stand at this point, and then I will open the public hearing, and we have a lot more people signed up for the budget then.
Were we supposed to direct staff to submit to HUD?
Yeah, sorry, we do.
Oh,
yeah,
thank
last
you.
one.
I forgot the motion. That's all right. I did too. So, yes, so we do need, if we can go back, I do need action on item 5B. Councilmember Cooper is ready. Do you want to make that motion, sir?
Thank you. I move to direct staff to submit the Community Development Block Grant Program Year 2022 CAPER to the Housing and Urban Development Department of Federal Government.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you. All right, now 5C. So take it away.
All right, thank you. Good evening, Madam Mayor, members of council. Again, for the record, Jay Burney, City Manager. It's not often that the budget is your easiest item on your agenda, so I'm happy to be that person for you tonight. Tonight is our last of two public hearings on the 2024 operating budget. After tonight, we have a finance committee tomorrow to discuss any requests or issues that come up out of your public hearing tonight, with final balancing scheduled for next week on November 21st. Most of what you're going to see in my presentation tonight is what I've already shared, so I'm going to go through these slides fairly quickly tonight so we can get right to the public hearing. I do want to make note that one of the concerns expressed at your first public hearing was a need for more budget information online. And as I shared last week, we have added more detailed information consistent with what we have shared in prior years, and that information was up online last week. Just in terms of an agenda, I'm going to quickly go through, again, things you've seen before: proposed new expanding funding, an updated pathway to budget balancing, proposed reductions, and a final balancing wrap-up, things I've got to clean up and work with Finance Committee on tomorrow, and then we'll talk about next steps on the operating budget. So these items here are items that are proposed additions to the budget for 2024, broken down into our comprehensive plan focus areas. We have spent time reviewing these in depth, so I just want to point out that there are new items in every focus area of the comprehensive plan to help us keep moving our community vision forward. In terms of a pathway to a balanced budget, again, you've seen this before. When I started balancing with department directors, we had a $14 million deficit is what we were facing. After looking at making some corrections and looking at some additional use of budget stabilization, we were able to bring that deficit down to just under $8 million. We then looked at some of the proposed increases here that affect the general fund that brought us back up to about a $9.2 million deficit. We then went and looked at making other adjustments to the budget around our insurance. We fine-tuned our wage adjustments. We increased our revenues. You're likely going to see one more small increase to our revenues when I bring this to you next week. I think we're going to have just some slightly bit more revenue to offset some of our expenditures, but that brought you down to 6.7. And then last week I shared with you in detail, which I'll cover here in a moment, about $1 million, just under $1 million in proposed reductions to the general fund, with a proposal to move some of that into a new fire apparatus reserve. Some of the conversations around the proposed addition: this budget also proposes $937,500 in reductions to the general fund. Some of them are one time next year, some of them are ongoing. We reviewed all these in depth. Again, none of these reductions slows down our ability to deliver our core services or delays any important project, priority, or program. I have some final wrap-up items in terms of coming back to you for final balancing on next week. I'll talk about with finance tomorrow. I need to circle back on the senior services home share and the home fund reserves. The council training and travel budget was an item that you asked us to spend a little more time on to look at that. I've done that work. I'll share some of that with finance committee tomorrow. The Thurston Conservation District request, we'll work that into the presentation next week. And then I added this one. It looks obvious that Prop 1 is going to pass at the ballot. That is meaningful for us. There's about $1 million of those dollars. There's about a little over $2 million that come to the city from Prop 1. About $1 million of it will help offset the cost of body cams. That's about $1 million of our budget is body cams. As council's aware, we funded that with ARPA dollars as a starting point. It created a bit of a bow wave. We're able to close that bow wave here. So just real quick, and I'll cover this again next week, what that really means for this budget is rather than using $2.7 million of fund balance above reserves, we only need now $1.7 million of fund balance above reserves. So that's really good news for this budget, although it doesn't mean much in terms of significant changes to what I've already presented to you. But and then we'll talk more next week about what the rest of that money looks like moving forward. So I'll spend some time with Finance Committee tomorrow night on that as well. This is your calendar moving forward. We are here tonight for your final public hearing. Again, I mentioned we have a Finance Committee tomorrow night. Next week, we're going to be remote, zooming in right in advance of the Thanksgiving holiday to do final budget balancing to hopefully be all wrapped up before we enjoy some turkey or other dishes later in the week. The first reading on your operating budget is December 12th, and the final budget adoption of the operating CFP is December 19th. With that, I will take any questions before you open the public hearing.
Any questions for city manager? All right, we could pretty soon recite that ourselves.
Yes.
I have one question.
Councilmember Parsley.
If it's okay with council, I'd like to bring to the Finance Committee meeting a discussion for a small increase in the neighborhood grant program for the Finance Committee to comment on and to have a full discussion with the city manager and Aaron.
All right, so consensus to discuss it?
Thank you.
Yep.
Got it.
Roundly supported on that. So, all right, so we have 4 people signed up for remote. I didn't see anybody signed up for in-person comment on the budget. So at this point, I'm going to open the public hearing on the 2024 proposed operating budget. For the record, this is our second public hearing. And I will call the names. And since there's only 4 people, I am going to allow for 3 minutes per person. So that's my prerogative. So I'm going to start with Jesse Taylor, followed by Karen Mesmer.
Jesse is traveling.
Hello?
We can hear you.
Hi. So I had originally come here with us, talk about the military budget and how that's affecting, shortages that we have in the Olympia budget and schools and such. But, my prepared speech after watching the mayor-elect and how many of you backpedaled when he claimed that this issue of Gaza was complicated and that we need to look how it began. I just felt the need for like a history lesson. He's right that we should look at where the violence began. And it began in 1948 when the state of Israel was created in an ethnic cleansing campaign known as the Nakba, where armed European settlers came in and violently drove 750,000 Palestinians out of their homes, killing 15,000 people. The land that was stolen during the Nakba is what makes up the entire modern state of Israel, which was based on the ethnic cleansing of the Palestinian people that originally lived there. In the 75 years since then, Palestinians have lived under a brutal apartheid regime that treats them as human animals, to take the words of the current Israeli defense minister. 20 Palestinians have been killed for every Israeli that's died in the conflict. And since the beginnings of the State of Israel, it's been based on the theft of Palestinian land and the brutalization of Palestinian people using US weapons. Every time Israeli citizens are killed, the media acts like the violence started a few weeks ago. And whatever disproportionate response that Israel takes, murdering thousands of children, bombing hospitals, assassinating journalists, cutting off millions of people's water, that it's all somehow justified as a response. But when we look at the violence in the full historical context, going back to the creation of Israel in 1948, we see that Israel is a violent, racist, occupying force on stolen Palestinian land, and that all of the violence originates from this fact. There's absolutely nothing that justifies murder of 5,000 children. And shame on the mayor-elect for suggesting that this is complicated. I'm a parent, and I've watched hours and hours of video of children's mangled bodies being pulled from rubble, of Israeli airstrikes, blowing up apartment complexes, schools, hospitals. There's children getting surgeries without anesthesia, laying in pools of their own blood on hospital floors, hospitals that don't have electricity, where surgeons are doing surgeries without anesthesia by the light of cell phones. And I just think y'all need to use your position of visibility, stand up for what you know is right, go and look at some videos of these children in Gaza, and call for a ceasefire, call for an end to US military aid, allow humanitarian aid into Gaza for the millions of people who don't have food, water, electricity, or medical supplies, say no to Islamophobia and anti-Semitism, and say no to genocide and ethnic cleansing. Free Palestine, ceasefire now. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Karen Mesmer, followed by Judy Barden.
Karen is traveling.
Good evening, council members. My name is Karen Mesmer. You should be able to see some relief for your budget concerns with the new funding that's going to be coming to the city from the county tax measure that just passed. This will help fund public safety actions in the coming years. I hope you'll consider using some of those funds to add extra patrols to the Karen Fraser and Chehalis Western trails. The recent regional trail plan survey showed some hesitation for people in using the trails because of their concern for crime along those trails. Also, the city has signed on to Target Zero, which means we are planning for 0 deaths on our roadways by 2030. The additional policing funds could be used for enforcement for the really obnoxious and dangerous activities that you've heard about recently regarding street racing. You heard about this happening along North Street in public comment several weeks ago. It's likely happening in other places. I hope we can get some enforcement increases in those areas. On another budget note, please consider that across the board cuts are not a way to budget for our priorities. You should look at real outcomes for your programs and projects and think about reducing some non-performing projects instead of simply asking every department to come up with, scraping around to find what they can offer up for budget reductions. That's not really budgeting by priorities at all. Considering the size of your year-end funds each year that has been ever increasing, I think you should be less worried about these, what I consider relatively small additions that you as council members are requesting, and really think about what you want to prioritize and what needs to be accomplished. It's your prerogative about how this budget works. And what I see sometimes is the council sort of apologizing for asking for something towards the end of the year, or needing to justify and find the funding sources for your requests. And it should go the other way around. You have some priorities, you've had some special requests. In the case of the urban farm programs, it's been in the works for a long time. You need to fund those and find some ways to take some programs off the books that aren't necessarily performing, or maybe they don't need as much money as they're getting from year to year. Your budgets have been really growing a lot, and it's time to take a look at some real substantive adjustments while you express your needs in other areas. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, Judy Barden, followed by Larry Jezza.
Judy's traveling.
Hi, I was signed up for comments on the rental registry, not for this budget. So I think there's some confusion.
That happens when there's like 3 or 4 different places to sign up online. So
I
if you'd
understand.
like to speak for 2 minutes on the rental registry, I'll allow that.
Okay, thank you. I attended the various council meetings on the rental registry. It started out as the way the city could get data on rentals and to have a home inspection for basic safety. However, when I saw the proposed draft ordinance and the rental inspection checklist, I was stunned. First, I feel the regulations are overly punitive to landlords with hefty daily fines for non-compliance. Also, the proposed rental inspections seem to be more than a basic safety inspection and closer to the type of inspection that would be done for purchasing a home. These are costly inspections, especially when they are done as required by a certified housing inspector. If any element of the checklist does not pass, the unit fails inspections and the item must be corrected and the unit re-inspected in 30 to 60 days. The program seems to closely mimic the Lake Woods, where 96% of the units failed their first inspection and 40% failed their second inspection. I think that the current proposed regulations will have a lot of unintended consequences. There will be multiple inspections required. It will be disruptive and time-consuming for both landlords and tenants. I had a tenant who worked nights, and inspection would have interrupted their sleep. Small landlords may find the regulations onerous and confusing and just decide to sell their rentals, turn them over to expensive management company, or get caught up violating the regulations because they don't understand them well. The increased cost registering with the city business license and inspections, plus landlord's time or the time of hiring staff to comply with the regulations, will ultimately lead to higher rents. Please modify these regulations.
Thank you. Our final person signed up is Larry Jezza. You have 3 minutes.
Are you allowing us to talk about other things that, like Judy just did? Like,
Mr. Jezza, you're wasting your time right now. Would you please start if you're going to talk about the
sure,
budget?
let's talk
Thank
about
you.
budgeting and taxes. Each unit, by the way, each unit, as we talked about earlier, is being subsidized $3,721 a month at 500 Columbia Place. With 232 units, imagine the 3,000 units coming to the Triangle area and probably an equal amount spread in the other expanded areas. If these buildings are subsidized, the shift will increase Olympia's tax rate by 68 cents. Remember now, it's currently about $1.83. A 68% increase in our taxes for homeowners, and the average homeowner will be paying approximately $375 more a year. So let's help those in need. With developers getting 100% plus profits in their Olympia housing investments, developers don't need another incentive, especially one being paid for without the voters' consent. And when we act to subsidize affordable housing, make it an efficient one. Under the proposal before you, 75 to 100% of the taxpayers' higher taxes don't go to affordable housing. It's not right, it's not smart, and it's not efficient, and it doesn't represent Olympia values. Finally, please consider requiring some mandatory affordability units in all the developments, especially in the Triangle area. We should lean against segregating where people can live based on income when we can, and recognize that your in lieu payments are really in lieu of having developers include lower income families in their buildings. A 300-unit complex is a big neighborhood, and it's one where affordable ADUs cannot be built. It's up to you to make it possible that the same people who serve coffee to the market rate renters in these buildings can also be their neighbors down the hall. It's a basic equity issue. I would also like to address the flaw in the 12-year MFTE design, which will drive developers to choose the 8-year option in a follow-up comment. Not tonight. And P.S., avoiding the tax shift is as easy as the council setting its tax rate equal to the subsidy amount. You're not required to max out your tax levy. So it's almost all in your hands if you choose to do so. You don't require the county auditor or assessor to do anything about it. It's your choice to set that rate. And correct me if I'm wrong, please, anybody who knows more. Thank you.
All right, that concludes people that signed up for the public hearing on the operating budget. There was some license taken there by a couple people, but I will ask if there's anybody in the audience that would like to also make any comments for the public hearing. Is there anybody here? Probably going to close the public hearing. All right, and next steps are our budget balancing is on, or not budget balancing, what are we calling next Tuesday?
Final budget balancing
Final
November
budget
21st, and then the adoption will happen December 12th.
December 12th. Excellent. Thank you so much. All right, we are on to the last business item of the evening, which will be followed by public comment that we can continue with. So we are, item 6A is potential approval of an ordinance establishing a rental housing registry and inspection program. And we've got Krista Lenson, our Senior Housing Program Specialist in the Office of Community Vitality. And we're going to, we're going to start with Darian Lightfoot, is going to kick us off. And can I just, a point of privilege, I'm just a little spicy tonight. If I see that slide one more time, I've asked for years, no reflection on you guys. But we have way nicer pictures of downtown now. All right, take it away. Thank you.
Wow, I'm getting up here when it's punchy. Okay. Hi, my name is Darren Lightfoot. I'm the Director of Housing and Homeless Response. Before I kick it over to the real expert on this matter, I just wanted to take a minute to talk about tonight and all the things that we've heard around housing and homeless response. We heard Dr. Braff come up and talk about the prize money and how we're going to target that to weatherization and trying to reduce utility bills for low-income families. I was able to talk about the MFTE during the public hearing, which incentivized development to address our unit count. Anastasia talked about how we're using our federal funding and leveraging additional dollars. And Krista's going to take us home tonight with the rental registry. And all of those, like I talk about again and again, are all pieces of the larger puzzle. It is ways that we can address the issue marginally, but the whole picture in every income level. And what Chris is going to talk about tonight is the rental registry, but this is homelessness prevention, this is housing stability, and this is investing in our current housing stock. So I just wanted to set it up and highlight what we've been talking about tonight and kick it over to Krista to talk more about the registry. Thank you.
Thanks, Darian. Thank you for the opportunity to present the ordinance tonight to establish a rental housing registry and inspection program. So today I'll provide some background on the process to develop this proposal, the challenges that we heard in public engagement, how the program is designed to address those challenges, alignment with other local, regional, and national efforts, the city's goals and the outcomes we're seeking to achieve, an overview of the ordinance and a timeline for its implementation, and additional policies that will be considered at a later date, as well as the scope and cost of the program and next steps if the ordinance is adopted. So Olympia began a process of public engagement around renter protections prior to the COVID-19 pandemic, which was suspended during the eviction moratorium. In 2021, the city restarted these efforts to identify policy options to address the challenges faced by renters in our community. Between late 2021 and early 2022, city staff and consultant Jason Robertson completed outreach with landlords, property managers, renters, and renter advocates. This included one-on-one interviews, focus groups, and online surveys to get feedback on various policy proposals, including a rental registry program. This work led to adoption of the ordinance that was adopted by council last August. And staff were directed to explore options for a rental housing registration program. Staff presented options to the Land Use and Environment Committee on rental registry models 3 times throughout 2022 and 2023. As part of that work, staff reviewed best practices from peer cities in Washington interviewed peer cities, and reviewed research on similar programs through our participation in a national peer studies cohort. Through our participation in the National Peer Cities cohort, we have found that many cities across the U.S. have implemented these same types of programs, some for several decades. These lessons were incorporated into our approach, and staff presented on the proposed registry program at Council's August study session. Additionally, in 2022 and 2023, the city participated in a regional assessment of fair housing, where we again heard from many renters about housing concerns and needs. As you heard in the presentations earlier this evening and from Darian, staff are working to address the housing needs of our community from various angles, from incentives to build, creating infill, offering funds for critical home repair, and funding affordable housing. We also need to ensure that we are maintaining the housing we currently have. We know that the majority of low-income individuals who are at risk of housing instability and homelessness are renters. It's imperative that we're able to connect low-income renters with resources to help stabilize their housing situation. According to projections from Department of Commerce, Thurston County needs additional units over the next 20 years. But when we look at our current housing stock, 48% of housing units were built before 1980, and 3,000 housing units were built before 1940. So while we need to continue building to meet demand, we also need to ensure we preserve our existing units. Nearly 60% of our assessment of fair housing survey respondents reported that high heating costs or insufficient heat is a concern in their current housing. 48% of respondents were concerned by mold in their housing. 45% of respondents were concerned by high cooling costs or insufficient cooling in their housing. And 33% of respondents were concerned by air quality and pollution. About 20% of those respondents indicated that they had experienced health impacts as a result of these conditions. Housing is a social determinant of health. Unsafe structural conditions can lead to falls and injuries. Asthma and other respiratory conditions are exacerbated by leaks, mold growth, and pests. Low-income families experience higher rates of asthma, with children having the highest rates of asthma. I've included a few quotes here from local residents who completed our assessment of fair housing and renter surveys. This is just a small sampling of comments provided, but reflects several other similar comments. So as you can see, some of them noted mold growth in their units that caused them to have health problems, and also noted the presence of rats or other pests. So proactive inspections through this program can help reduce disparities by ensuring that tenants with the greatest needs and the least resources are not disproportionately disadvantaged by poor housing quality, and that the benefits of safe, healthy, and affordable housing are more equitably distributed among residents. Proactively addressing unit conditions before major repairs are needed will support housing preservation, which supports both stability and health outcomes for tenants. Proactive property maintenance can improve tenant health and also save landlords money in the long run. Research indicates that low-income residents, immigrants, and refugees are less likely to report substandard housing conditions due to fear of retaliation. A participant in a landlord focus group commented, "I wish tenants would inform us of needed repairs before they move out because it saves us both." A study of Seattle's complaint-driven code enforcement system found that inspections in more than half of the properties identified code violations that tenants or neighbors had never reported. In Asheville, North Carolina, residential fires decreased by 50% when they implemented a proactive inspection program, and rose again when the program was discontinued. In Sacramento, their program reduced housing and dangerous building cases by 22%. So many other cities have used different approaches to implement a registry and inspection program. Some cities have used this as a program to address major substandard housing issues. The city's goal in implementing this program is not to penalize property owners, but to bring all rental properties to a reasonable baseline standard through cooperative compliance with property owners. Staff will connect property owners with funding, information, or other resources. One of the most common sentiments that I hear from landlords that I talk with is that they have difficulty keeping up with changes to state and local regulations. Through the registry, the city will have a clear communication channel to keep landlords and renters updated on policy changes or proposed policy changes. In general, in our public engagement, there was widespread support from both landlords and renters to implement a registry that provides easily accessible information. That sentiment is echoed in the quotes that are provided here from both landlords and tenants who participated in surveys. So the program can also be adapted to be responsive to needs and to target resources to address challenges. We heard feedback from other cities that we talked to not be afraid to make changes to the program over time. So city staff want to hear feedback to know if the resources we're providing are useful and to create a program that benefits our community. Feedback will help us make those tools and resources better over time. So the city is currently utilizing community development block grant funds to offer rental housing rehabilitation, weatherization, and energy efficiency upgrades for landlords renting to low-income tenants in partnership with Energize Olympia, as you heard from Anastasia earlier. Staff will continue to seek out funding opportunities and resources to offer additional support for repairs and upgrades. Creating an energy efficiency baseline as part of the inspection process will help the city address its climate goals. This approach will help the city implement strategies identified in the Thurston Climate Action Plan to reduce energy use in existing buildings, increase the production of local renewable energy, and electrify buildings to phase out natural gas. According to a national 2016 study by the American Council for an Energy Efficient Economy and Energy Efficiency for All, low-income, Black, and Latinx communities spend a much higher share of their income on energy. Additionally, the study found that 97% of excess energy burdens for renting households could be eliminated by bringing their homes up to median efficiency standards. So we're seeing support for this work on a national level, as evidenced by inclusion in the recently released White House Blueprint for a Renter's Bill of Rights. HUD has a long-standing priority for funding critical home repair and weatherization through their Healthy Homes program and Community Development Block Grant program. Other federal agencies like the Department of Energy are funding residential retrofits. Additionally, this platform will help the city to make progress on goals identified in various city and regional work plans, such as Olympia's Housing Action Plan, Thurston Climate Action Plan, Assessment of Fair Housing, Consolidated Plan, Olympia Strong, One Community Plan, and the Thurston County Homeless Crisis Response Plan. So this program has been designed to help the city achieve our goals to preserve housing stock, improve health and safety, make progress on climate goals, facilitate education and communication with both landlords and tenants, and gather data about rental units. The ordinance before you today establishes a requirement for rental housing owners in the city of Olympia to register their properties annually, to obtain a business license, and to undergo periodic inspections that monitor health, safety, and energy efficiency standards. It also adds protections to the current rental housing code that provide additional protections against retaliation for tenants asserting their rights under OMC 5.82. It prohibits passing on charges to a tenant to comply with the program and prohibits rent increases if the unit is uninhabitable or fails inspection. The proposed timeline for implementation will provide us time to set up internal processes as well as to conduct outreach with rental property owners. Staff has proposed the inspection program requirements will begin to take effect on January 1st, 2025, and all other amendments take effect on March 1st, 2024. At Council's August study session, we discussed the need to provide tenant relocation assistance that will help households transition in the event we find housing units that are substandard and require major repairs. Implementing this relocation assistance program requires a public hearing, so a proposed program will be brought to Council early next year. We also discussed junk fees at the study session in August after hearing from tenants and tenant advocates about extra fees charged for things like a monthly garbage valet service and for posting a legal notice. During the renter protection conversations, we also heard concerns about cooling and heard from some tenants that their landlord will not allow them to install an AC unit. With climate change, AC is becoming a greater need in our region to ensure the health and safety of residents, particularly seniors and people with disabilities. These options could be reviewed by the Land Use and Environment Committee or brought directly to Council for consideration. During the study session in August, we discussed the budget gap for the first 2 years of program operation and indicated that staff were seeking funding opportunities to meet that gap. We have since learned we were successful in seeking funding from the Department of Energy, as you heard earlier tonight, to fill that budget gap, and we anticipate that the program will be revenue neutral. As program compliance improves, we will have more funding available to offer supportive resources. I want to remind Council again of the exemptions that we discussed at the study session. Owner-occupied properties where they rent a room in their home are entirely exempted from the program. Owner-occupied properties with one rental unit on site, such as an ADU or a duplex, are required to register, but not required to obtain a business license or complete inspections. Property owners will be required to pay an annual $35 per unit registration fee, which will be waived for affordable housing providers. They will also need to pay an initial $50 business license application fee to the Department of Revenue if they haven't already obtained a business license. After that initial application cost, it will cost $5 annually to renew with the Department of Revenue. Businesses operating in the city of Olympia also must obtain an Olympia endorsement on their business license, which costs $30 annually. And this endorsement is waived for nonprofit organizations. As a reminder, rental housing is not subject to city or state B&O taxes. Inspections will be required once every 5 years, and inspections will be conducted by a private third-party inspector certified by the city. New construction won't be subject to inspection requirements for the first 10 years of occupancy. Alternate inspection reports can be submitted if an affordable housing provider is already required to complete periodic inspections as a funding obligation. Typically, this is required by HUD as a condition of receiving federal funding to provide affordable housing to low-income households. So I wanted to provide some context about the financial impact that this will have on Olympia properties. So nearly 95% of Olympia rental properties have 4 or fewer units. About 80% of all rental properties would pay approximately $150 or less per year. This includes fees and inspection costs that are averaged out over a 5-year time period. Less than 2% of rental properties have 50 or more units, but those units represent 51% of all rental units in the city of Olympia. Several of the largest apartment complexes receive low-income housing tax credits to provide affordable housing and could seek an exemption from those annual registration fees. So if council passes this ordinance, we will plan to post a position in December for a full-time program coordinator and would hire early in the new year. Staff will work to update our website, create informational materials about the program, as well as schedule online and in-person informational meetings. Staff will work to develop a registration portal, application, and checklist. We will work with the Department of Revenue to establish a rental housing endorsement through our existing business licensing portal. Rental property owners can apply for a regular Olympia endorsement at this time, but future use of a rental housing endorsement will help staff to be able to track business licenses associated with rental housing more easily in the future. Housing staff will also work with our climate program to seek technical assistance through our participation in the building upgrade cohort to develop an energy efficiency checklist for the inspection program. So at this time, I'm happy to answer any additional questions as you discuss whether or not to approve the ordinance today.
Thank you. I'm going to start with Councilmember Madrone, followed by Councilmember Parsley.
Thanks. And I have some comments I prepared as the chair of the Land Use Committee that has brought this forward. So the first time that the idea of a rental housing registry was discussed, at least in my time on council, was actually early in 2021 at the Land Use Committee's annual code enforcement update. Our lead code enforcement officer showed pictures of a second floor apartment where the back of a porch had completely fallen off. And when I asked him how we could prevent the same problem with another unit, his suggestion was a proactive approach, establish a rental housing registry and inspection program. And so one of the things that I keep hearing from folks in the community is, what are the problems we're trying to address? And at the risk of repeating some things that Krista just shared, we lack information on rental housing in our community, and renters make up 54% of the population. We have rental housing in our community that is falling into disrepair, impacting current and future housing options. We have renters living in unsafe and unhealthy homes who face barriers in reporting these conditions to their landlords or to the city. We have landlords who may not even be aware of conditions that cause their property to deteriorate or put their tenants at risk. And both landlords and renters lack information on their rights and responsibilities. I've heard from some that they would like to see hard data to justify the existence of these problems. And Krista has shared, the data that we do have access to regarding these issues. And this might not satisfy the folks who would like to see more around that. But part of the problem is we don't have a way to collect the information absent a program like this. We lack really important information on the housing that a majority of our population depends on. And also, as a part of our equity work as a city, we updated our comprehensive plan to lean into both quantitative and qualitative data in our analysis of issues. And we've heard a lot of qualitative data. To move forward on our work around rental housing policies, as part of implementing our housing action plan In 2021 and 2022, the city worked with a consultant to conduct focus groups, interviews, and a survey for landlords and tenants. I attended all of the focus groups, which consisted of tenants, tenant advocates, and landlords. In August of 2022, the council unanimously passed the recommendations from the Land Use Committee for our first round of tenant protections, which were intended to provide immediate relief while we continue to work on this issue. During these discussions, we identified our next step was to work on a rental registry program, and this was met with support by the City Council. The Land Use Committee continued our work. We asked staff to research how peer cities have approached a rental registry program. After a review and debate of the merits of various rental registry programs, including, why would we, should we do an education-only registry, or should we do one that's based on inspections, we unanimously supported the approach that you see before you tonight. I'd like to say that Olympia is leading on the leading edge of this issue, as we are on many issues around housing, but we're actually following more than a dozen cities in Washington. Kent, Lakewood, Burien, Mount Lake Terrace, Tukwila, Aberdeen, Prosser, Pasco, Bellingham, Kenmore, Tacoma, Spokane, and Seattle all have rental housing registry programs that have an inspection component. These are cities of all sizes and all politics that have recognized this as a solution. In some cities, inspections are required every other year. In most cities, it's 3 years. And I've been told that Olympia is actually being very generous with 5-year inspections. I've also heard from tenants that it's not often enough, but I'm okay with the approach. And in addition to all of these cities, all Section 8 housing, all federally administered affordable housing, they all have the same inspection requirements that are being proposed here. I want to acknowledge the concerns that we've heard about this proposal. It's been met with resistance from many landlords in our community. I read every email. I've heard every voice spoken in this room this evening and on previous nights, and I recognize that there are impacts. I've also heard from some landlords who really support this program. They recognize that complying with these new requirements will cause some inconvenience, but they support this proactive solution to improve conditions for all renters in our community. And they also think that this program will ultimately benefit them as landlords, supporting them in managing their properties and being able to advertise their compliance when listing their rentals on the market. I've also heard from many tenants living in unsafe and unhealthy living conditions who have shared their challenges with getting necessary repairs for their housing. I've experienced this as myself as a tenant in this community in a home where the landlord was unresponsive to my request to fix a leaky roof or deal with windows that were painted shut. And also, in this community, we've seen some devastating fires in rental housing just in the past couple of years. And so from tenants, one of the things that I've heard, one of the ways I've heard this program is described is a game changer for their quality of life. And so in a society where housing is treated as a commodity, owning and operating rental housing, it is a business and it comes with responsibilities. This program's been designed to minimize the impacts while achieving our goals. It's based on best practices and achieving an approach that is aligned with other cities in Washington. As I said, we're pursuing a best practice that is designed to serve tenants, and I think it will also support landlords, it will support neighbors, and it's going to support the whole community. So I want to thank staff for their considerable work that's been done to bring us to this decision tonight, and encourage my colleagues to support this proposal.
Thanks for that context. Councilmember Parsley.
I have two things, but first, I believe our city manager spoke to another city manager in another city. Would you feel appropriate to make comments on what you heard?
Sure. So I had an opportunity to speak to the city manager in the city of Lakewood, which is one of the cities that's implemented this program. And what he said to me was pretty impactful from my view. He said there's 3 significant times in the city of Lakewood's history. One was the year of their incorporation, 1996. The second was when they established their own police department around public safety. And the third was 2017, when they established their home safety program, which is a version of our rental registry. And what he shared with me is that they've seen it bring a voice to the voiceless, to marginalized community members, that absentee landlords have been divesting themselves from, and those units have become in a local ownership. They've had a big issue with absentee landlords out of state, out of town landlords, and they've seen those landlords divest themselves, and they've seen those units fall into local ownership. It's protected low-income properties. They've not seen the drop-off in low-income rentals in the Lakewood community. He did say that, you know, a lot of the landlords after the fact have talked about repairs they didn't know were needed, and the possibility that has saved them money in the long term as a benefit to landlords. They are seeing landlords in the area use this program as a way to say, I am in compliance, to market their rental units. And that I asked a very specific question about whether or not they'd seen a drop off in the number of rental units in the city of Lakewood since this program started, and he said there's been no noticeable change in the number of rental units in this program. So I've known John Caulfield, the city manager in Lakewood, for a long time, and so I felt comfortable giving him a call just to see what he knows, what he could tell me, and that's what he shared.
Thank you, that was helpful. My question is, well, there's actually two, one little one and one little, okay, lot bigger. You mentioned in there that you would encourage us, if we did such an ordinance, to feel free to amend it as we go, as we find changes that are necessary or that might improve it. What I'm curious about, and I didn't hear this, and this maybe is a big discussion, so you can punt it to an email if you want, but what metrics are we going to be looking at in terms of this being a success, this needing an amendment, this needing a correction? Because it's not just about what we're finding in the units, in my mind, it's also what we're finding in communications with our landlords as well as our renters. Are we seeing that improve? Are we seeing a collaborative environment being established, as well as our climate goals and so forth? What kind of, I know based on this, we have to get it going and everything, but from the moment we get it going, we need to be collecting data. So where are we going with that?
Yeah, I think there's a number of data points that we can look at, both qualitative and quantitative, like the number of properties registered and licensed first off. But then after that, you know, the amount of increased communication. So I think, you know, my hope is that we'll hear from both tenants and landlords about, you know, I'm really confused about what proper notice is. What does that mean? And we can provide information and resources when we start hearing those concerns come up time and time again. I think we can also look at impacts over time on our code enforcement cases and the severity of those cases that we're seeing, and whether this program over time addresses those issues before they really snowball into bigger problems. So I think if we work collaboratively, we'll be working very closely between our housing team and code enforcement. Additionally, with the energy efficiency, there are specific ratings and scales that can be used. And Dr. Braff knows a lot more about this, but there are, I believe it's called HERS ratings. So there are some specific metrics that can be attached to that as well. So I think that, you know, those are some indicators that we'll see of success. But I'm sure there will be other things that come out of this work.
Thank you. I would encourage you, not now, because it looks like if this passes, putting on the agenda or in the calendar, because you know how our agendas get full very, very quickly, in 2025 or 2026, yeah, it's a ways out, but coming back and briefing the council, and also land use, but the council as a whole, because when you pass an ordinance, it takes 7 of us voting. So I appreciate going to land use to refine a presentation, but I think it needs to come to the whole council. Because we heard from tonight all of the community members that are very concerned about an ordinance such as this. And it's on all of our heads if we pass this to make sure that any program we start is successful. Okay? This little one, which probably is going to be easy for you to answer. It is under exempt rental units. I've read this like 3 times and I'm trying to understand it. It's exempt rental units, B, number 2, a unit not available for rent. Well, that sort of seems like, well, of course it's going to be exempt. It's not for rent, but maybe I'm looking at it wrong.
Yeah. We actually talked about this with our legal department. There are going to be instances where somebody might, let's say they have a unit that needs some major remodeling, they want to make some updates. Maybe they take it offline for 6 months to a year and they make those updates. Or maybe they allow a family member to stay there, but then they'll put it back on the rental market. So there are instances where somebody might, take it off the market temporarily.
You done? All right, who's next? Anybody? Councilmember Payne, followed by Mayor Pro Tem Gilman.
Yes, first of all, thank you, City Manager Bernie, for pulling back the curtain a bit on that conversation, because actually my question that I was prepared to come to with for tonight was around the impact of the dozen or so cities that you mentioned. So besides Lakewood, we've heard quite a bit from folks at public comment, from emails that have come in after our study session on this, about if we do this, we are somehow doing the reverse of what we intend to do, which is to bring more affordable housing development to our community. So I just have to ask this question anyway, even though we just heard it for one particular city. Have we seen that kind of impact from any of these communities that have adopted this program?
I have not heard that or seen that data from any other cities who are currently doing this work. And all of the cities that I interviewed really felt like it was helped them be in better communication with landlords and help them have a better handle on the housing units in their community.
Thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem Gilman.
Thank you, Mayor Selby. First, I have a tiny request that if we're to pass this ordinance in the draft checklist, there could be some plain talking, that there is a section describing the requirements for lavatories and water closets, and not even Encyclopedia Britannica could help me clarify what's happening there. Yeah, which year? At any rate, and then the paragraph below that refers to the requirement for luminaires. And I know there's a band that's almost spelled like that, but anyhow, so I
had the
think
same question.
We'll be careful to have sort of the everyday names for things. If that means toilet and bathroom sink, then maybe that's what we should use. So I have that in my mind. And I very much support and agree with Councilmember Madrone's summary of our process in land use. And I want to just offer my understanding or my positioning around, there's been, fierce defense each time over the years I've been on council that we've approached any kind of conversation about rental housing, ownership, investment in real estate in Olympia. It's been quite passionate, and I think that the situation has changed enough in recent years with wealth inequality growing and with the majority of our residents as renters, that we're in a different situation than when the culture of how wise it was as a middle class person to get some stability and wealth by buying another house. That was at a time when 70% of folks owned a home. So when there was a high rate of home ownership, and somebody had more wealth and they could buy a second house, that was pretty interesting, right? And that was stability. But when we're at a time where the majority of people are renting and somebody's debating whether or not to buy their 10th house, it's exacerbating this issue, this wealth inequality. So I think that's a change in the world that changes the the problem that we're trying to address, which is taking care of the basic quality of the housing product offered to the majority of people who live in Olympia. And I think the business license debate that came up again across the comment this afternoon helps to illuminate, you know, even that it's a controversial decision of, is this just a passive investment and I happen to have some people live in it and pay my mortgage for me? Or am I running a business that provides housing to people? And I think it's a cultural shift. I think it's a historical shift. But I also think that aside from the political part, the actual mechanics of having a $30 business license and every 5 years having a home inspection is not, to me, a dramatic imposition in exchange for having a little more certainty for the majority of our folks who live in the community. So I want to appreciate that over the years, I've heard from many landlords who maintain their property well and rent, you know, keeping the rent the same for years for folks, renting below market value. And I hope that those practices will continue. But I also believe that this is a fair way to ensure that people have basic safety and quality of life standards met in their housing. Thanks.
Okay, Councilmember Nguyen.
Hey, Krista, thank you for your presentation tonight. This is a hot one, obviously. Could you talk a little bit of I understand that you have been meeting with folks that have a lot of rental properties or in those spaces. Can you talk a little bit about those interactions and as this has come up and what the reactions have been?
Yeah, I'll say like during our focus group conversations and some of the one-on-one interviews we had, there was a lot of support generally for having a registry, just because of the kind of sentiment I've shared. I hear it all the time when I talk to landlords that they struggle to keep up with legal changes and requirements. And this provides us an avenue to do that. And so there has been a lot of support for that. What's been, more controversial is the inspection component, because there are a lot of property owners who feel they already keep up their properties because they want to maintain their asset. And so, clearly there are some issues with the housing units in our community that aren't being kept up to those standards. So I think that's where a lot of the strife is being asked to do these inspections when they feel they're being responsive to repair requests and trying to maintain their properties. And our goal is not to penalize the people who are keeping up their properties, but just to make sure that everyone is maintaining a basic level of health and safety in the units they provide.
Certainly, thank you. I won't bury the lead here. I'm really supportive of this, and it's a little tough to kind of get there and get behind. Though I really appreciate the process that Olympia took with this. We could always improve. We could always plain talk things more, get information out earlier. Absolutely. There were a flood of emails that came in, some form letter type emails, but those are important too. And then people had to come in public comment. And I heard from people that I really respect and know out in the community, and I was surprised by their position on things, whether they were pro or against it. I am really, really thankful of the work by council members on the land use committee. I think that you really, in my opinion, you really took your time with this one to try to really get it right, and I think the intent is in a good place, and I believe the impact will be good as well, and certainly we'll receive updates on that. I really respect that there's sort of a phase-in, right, with the registry happening in next year, but then taking the time to get up to speed so that we can in 2025 start with the inspection process should it pass tonight. I also really want to kind of key in on the section of your presentation tonight that really breaks down like, okay, how much are we really talking about here? And also, how many are there that are ma and pop, right? We're talking about the smaller landlords in town, and there are a lot. And so for them, there's sort of certain benefits to that. If when you're a smaller landlord, you feel things more. And then also seemingly have maybe a little less capital to play with, but you also have less units to pay for, right, with the 30 some fee. So I don't see it as being large enough that it has created this sort of response, if I'm honest. I also I'm been a renter and still am, and the place I'm in currently, they leave me a notice that I'm going to have an inspection. We have it every year. They come in and inspect anyway, every year. Sometimes I'm like, gosh, what are you really looking for? So I feel like that as a tenant. But I think that there's, I don't want to recap everything that my council members had said, but I really feel like there's a lot of benefits, obviously, to tenants that are in poor situations, certainly. But I also, I don't want to paint all the landlords with a broad brush. Like, this is not, in my opinion, and where we're coming from as a council, I believe, and staff, is that this is not penalizing landlords. This is not, trying to hunt for the monstrous ones out there. It's not that. It's just, I see it as, hey, how can we help you? And I do see benefits for them as well. And if there is that, I believe, and I've experienced as a tenant, there is that goodness out there. And I've also had the landlord that, I had a hole in my roof for the longest time, and I was afraid to say something, and when I did, nothing happened anyway, So there's the whole spectrum out there. And at the root of this, I think that this is good. I can't find a whole lot of reasons other than, some hopefully not so hurt feelings, but going against the grain of some really respected people in the community that I've heard from that are not in favor of this. But I just see a lot of wins here, and I can't find really any reason to not support it. I really, really appreciate the work on this one. I really believe that there are great landlords out there that are taking care of their tenants, and I don't see the issue in ensuring that is done, right? And continuing to find ways from the rental registry piece, to continue that connection with landlords, because as we're seeing our population grow, and even just right now, housing providers are so important. So I'd like to have more of a connection with them in the city. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Okay. Councilmember Cooper.
Thank you, Mayor Selby. Just lift up a couple of thoughts as I'm listening to the dialogue here. And the first one is time. I was trying to think about how many issues this is my 12th year, I did the math, you asked me earlier. In my 12 years on the city council, have come back to a committee 3 times. And it's not very many. This is a significant body of work for the city council. And so we have some great landlords in our community. And I want to make sure I acknowledge that up front. There's a lot of really good mom and pops who are doing their best to kind of scrape their retirement kitty and keep it solid while they have a tenant in there and try to do right with, the right rental price based on their own costs. And I want to honor that and lift that up as my comments. But I also think that the most telling part of this conversation is that, and I've had a couple of people talk to me offline, and I've actually been in this situation as a renter where you have a subpar unit, and if you bring it up, you will lose your house. And that is what we're trying to deal with. And that is why we don't even have renters coming forward to be on the record about this. This is about people without a voice for me. The soup almost, approaching a third of our community. 54% is a lot. It's growing significantly. All of the new housing is rental. All of it that's being built is rental. And so in 10 years, we will have a policy that we'll be as proud of then as we are today about the Clean Water Act and the Clean Air Act. They didn't exist. You know, they do now, and we've managed to, you know, bald eagles are almost not endangered, right? You know, that it's significant shifts in our community or in how we regulate growing industries that are not about one or two people, it's about the whole industry, all of the people, and it's uncomfortable when you're the person trying to manage day to day. I run a small organization every day, and I know that every little thing is really hard, and when you don't have staff and you're just trying to do this while you work, it can be difficult. But for me, this is Olympia's Safe Rental Housing Act, and is tantamount to the Clean Water Act for the city of Olympia. So, thank you.
Thank you. I think I'm going to go now. And you all know where I'm going with this, and I know I'm going to go down in flames, but I feel like I have to say some things. And I'll start with our operating agreements. I love this. The last bullet, we agree to be tough on the issue, tender on the person. So this isn't about you, Krista. You did amazing work, and I commend you for that. And the amount of outreach that you and Jason Robertson did, albeit I don't feel like it was enough outreach to the landlords based on the input that we got that they're being blindsided by this. So I would push back a little bit that we did all the outreach that we could have done. It came to land use 3 times, but only came to council once. And for a program of this scope, I think it needed a public hearing, and it needed more than what we were able to give our community. So I have a couple questions first. It was brought up that we're charging the highest annual rate per door in the state, and do you know why?
So, we looked at some other programs and how they were funded. A lot of the other programs are funded largely through general funds. And so staff was really directed to look at, what is a reasonable fee that is going to cover the costs of adequately staffing this program. And one of the things we heard over and over from other cities was make sure that you adequately staff this program so that you can actually, do what you're intending to do with it. And so that's really what we intended to do in designing the program. And it wasn't just me, there were internal folks that I was working with at the city through code enforcement, the building official, just looking at, what is it realistically going to take to staff this program.
And what is that? How many people are we hiring?
Yeah, so this first year, we're hoping to hire that full-time coordinator right away. And then when the implementation begins in March, we hope to hire a half-time permit tech who will help process all the incoming registrations. Mm-hmm. And then we won't hire a code enforcement officer until the year the inspections begin, and probably into that year. So we'll really be working in these first year and a half to do education, gain compliance with folks without, actively seeking code enforcement.
All right, and so when we had the presentation in August, I thought there was a slide that showed that there would actually be a surplus starting in a couple of years, and that surplus was going to go to help with relocation, thank you, assistance is late, and other kinds of rental assistance. So that slide wasn't on this, and it says it's revenue neutral now. So can you speak to that?
Sure, yeah. So the numbers, the projections haven't changed at all. Relocation assistance is still on the table, and we'll be, I hope to be presenting that in January or February as soon as possible, so we can get that solidified as well.
But I guess my question was, it's not revenue neutral if we're going to have a surplus every year that can go into these other types of assistance. So is that still correct, that we're going to be making like extra $200,000 a year?
The number is much lower than that. So it was somewhere in the realm of 20 to 40,000 in year 3 or 4. Okay. And so those extra funds could be used either to it could be used in a variety of ways depending on the needs. We could be working to provide more resources and trainings to landlords. We could be providing relocation assistance. We could help with rehab costs and upgrades. Those are all things that could be considered that would be, dovetail into this program.
All right. And there was another slide up tonight that said the average cost you figured would be about $150 per year per unit, that the cost would.
For a small property owner?
For a small property owner. And what was included if the business license is $35 a year and then it's $35 for the unit, where's the extra $95 coming from?
Yeah, so the highest quote that I heard from some of the King County folks that are doing these type of inspections in other cities was $250 for a single family home. And so basically I'm just dividing that number over 5 to create that annual rate. Likely it would be less than 150. I'm just giving a conservative estimate there.
Okay, thank you. And then I'm going back to like my numbers here. We all want everybody to live in a safe and healthy home. Absolutely. So that's no question. Where I'm going with this is this the right tool? It feels like we're using a baseball bat to kill a mosquito, right? It's like a really, really high labor-intensive, costly FTE program that's going to insert this whole layer of bureaucracy in a system that actually I think is working pretty well. And I think that's what we heard from our people in the emails, the people speaking to us tonight. And I kind of quibble with the fact that that tenants feel like they don't have a voice in these agreements, in these leases. That's not what we're hearing from people that are managing these units. It's not what we're hearing from landlords. That tenants, especially in Olympia, are very comfortable talking to their landlords and putting in work orders and such when their unit is substandard. And honestly, some of the people that don't say or don't communicate with their landlords because they don't want somebody in their unit because some of the damage is what they've created. And so are there any protections left for landlords when somebody trashes a unit?
They would still have all the same rights that they have currently under the state landlord-tenant laws to pursue, compensation for damages that were caused by a tenant. Okay. All right. Another clarifying question. Federal assistance, we talked about this. So units that already get subsidies from the federal government or even local subsidies, there's many different programs, and all those programs require an inspection already. So they're exempt, right? Okay, so where I'm going with this is we got this $350,000 building up prize money, and it's going to be used to prop up this program. And honestly, that is kind of frustrating / I don't know what the other word is, that these are dollars that we already know where units are, where there's affordable housing. We should be going in doing the energy audits there and doing the energy upgrades in those affordable units. That's like low-hanging fruit, but now we're going to use it instead to hire 1.5 FTEs and waste all this time when we need to do these energy upgrades for our affordable housing stock now, I believe. That's my opinion. All right. One more thing. Oh, the inspection sheet. So I've been fortunate to be able to buy my own home and a rental property. And so when you buy a home, you have a building inspection, right? That's part of your, it protects you as a buyer. This checklist is as intense and thorough and as a building inspection you'd have to buy a house. And I wouldn't know. I would say that today my own home probably wouldn't pass this. And I would challenge everybody up here that owns a home to look at this checklist and see if where they're living actually passes this. So it seems so onerous and over the top, what we're expecting, just for the record.
And then for people that have their properties managed, or it sounds like, Councilmember, when you have an annual inspection already, most landlords do that as a normal course of business. They go into the unit once a year and make sure everything's cool and safe. And so we're already paying for that, and now we gotta pay for it again with people that are motivated to find problems. This is a self-licking ice cream cone here. This is like people that are paid to find problems, and so their job security is to find a problem, and they're gonna find something. And it shuts down a process and causes a reinspection. It's invasive for the tenants. I just really, really struggle with the inspection piece of this. And when I was interviewed as a landlord and a council member 2 years ago, I said all in on a landlord registry to help landlords, especially small landlords, navigate all the ordinances and laws that are being put on top of us, because it's very confusing, and we want to do it right. So it could be like a conduit to more information and more relationship building between landlords and tenants, and I totally support that. And the $35 business fee that most landlords don't know they owe, because my CPA said I didn't need a business license, and so this is news to me. So there's going to be all this other money that's going to be coming in to the city, that we could just start small and phase it, give it a couple years with just a registry, and see if we can accomplish a lot more of these goals than trying to put in a whole nother department with a layer of bureaucracy that is just a solution trying to find a problem. You've heard that so many times. But, and I'll leave it with this. There's a saying that we've heard many times, nothing about us without us. But it feels like that doesn't apply to the private sector in this city, because we're not brought in on a lot of these decisions, or we are dismissed. And I feel like that's what's happened with this program, is the people that are the housing providers in the trenches, their positions are being dismissed. So no surprise, I'll be voting no. But I will go ahead and entertain a motion. Councilmember Cooper.
Thank you, Mayor Selby. I move to approve the ordinance to establish a rental housing registry and inspection program.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed? No. All right, wasn't that fun? All right, we are moving on to additional public comment. And if there's anybody that's still here, we are going to listen to them, because they are very, very patient. So we only have remote people left. 10 of them are speaking against the rental registry and inspection program, and 3 are regarding Palestine. So we'll start with, see if Jerry Snyder is around. Is Jerry Snyder still in the queue?
Still in the queue. I'm waiting to see if they'll slide over.
Yeah, I'll call out some names so people can be ready. Jerry Snyder, followed by Harry Branch, followed by Melissa Allen, followed by Judy Barden.
Jerry is traveling.
Okay.
Jerry has declined.
Okay. It's throwing their white flag up. All right. We've got Harry Branch, followed by Melissa Allen, followed by Judy Barden, followed by Walt Jorgensen.
Harry is no longer in the queue.
Okay. Melissa Allen, Judy Barden.
Melissa is no longer in the queue.
Judy Barden, Walt Jorgensen.
Judy is in the queue. And she already spoke. Is traveling.
All right.
Hey, Cheryl.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. I've already commented earlier.
Oh, okay, I'm so sorry. There's, like I said, there was 4 sign-up sheets and people signed up for numerous things, and I'm so sorry, I lost track. Thank you.
Thank you for calling me again.
You
Walt
bet.
is
Thanks for
here.
being honest. All right, next we have, I think we already heard, yep, okay. So Jennifer Healy, followed by Martina Reed.
Jennifer's traveling.
All right.
Hi, can you hear me?
We can.
Do I need to turn video on?
You don't have to, but there you are.
Okay. So I'm Jen Healy. I'm a military member, and I've rented my home in Olympia since 2008. It's our retirement home. I'm concerned that this program will transform the collaborative partnership between landlord and tenants in Olympia for the worse. I question whether this council exercised due diligence in considering alternatives to establishing a business license requirement. What methods did you use to obtain data about rental housing in Olympia? Did you contact local property managers, title companies, HOAs? Did you consider existing methods for sharing information available to both landlords and tenants via an internet search? The State Attorney General's website is robust, and it includes resources such as free statewide legal services for tenants and tenant counseling and education. There's also tenant rights hotline and other resources for landlords available online. What information will the City of Olympia provide that the state is not? The Revised Code of Washington establishes landlord duties to maintain housing to minimum standards. It sets strict timelines for landlords to repair unsafe and unhealthy conditions. It affords tenants remedies in the case of violations, to include termination of the lease and withholding rent. In drafting this proposal, did you consider exemptions for military members or landlords with property managers who already have a business license? When drafting this proposal, did you consider certification of inspections without requiring business license registration? Finally, what other programs could have been resourced instead that would get to this problem in a better, more effective way? Mental health and substance abuse are greater contributors to homelessness. What about crime, domestic violence, education? What are the human costs of this program? If my family is compelled to register as a business, we'll either sell our home or treat it as a business and raise our rent to fair market value. Thank you for your time. I'm available if you have any questions of me.
Thank you. Next, we have Martina Reed, followed by Omar White, followed by Stephen Dallaire.
Martine, Omar, and Stephen are no longer in the queue. Brenda is in the queue, however.
Brenda Rumble.
Ready to rumble. Brenda is traveling.
Lisa, do you have a nice long report for tonight?
Oh, yeah, I got a lot.
She's got a lot tonight.
See, right here.
I'm not kidding.
Next week, we'll all be virtual, and we can do reports then.
Can we
Oh, come on. Don't you want to see live?
Watch me make pie while you do your report.
Move to adjourn.
Yes, yeah.
Is Brenda traveling? She coming in from New York? My mic is cut, so I can just say whatever I want. How about, do you want to go to someone else and come back? Okay, I've got Jesse Taylor, followed by Paul Knox.
Brenda has declined.
Brenda's declined. Smart girl. All right, Jesse Taylor, followed by Paul Knox.
Jesse is traveling.
Traveling, all right.
This is Palestine.
Hi again.
Oh, I'm so sorry. We've already heard from you. Again, you've signed up in 2 spots.
I actually have a different issue to talk about. It was about the housing stuff. And I just wanted to talk about, a big housing issue that I've been seeing is that, according to the United Nations, nearly 45% of all the housing in Gaza has been destroyed by the Israeli military. I want you to take like a moment to let that sink in, that imagine nearly half of the homes in the Seattle area had been destroyed by aerial bombardment, missile strikes, artillery shells, bodies being pushed into mass graves with bulldozers, dogs eating people's bodies in the streets because the morgues are overflowing and the streets are undrivable to handle the dead. Thousands of dead children, tens of thousands more wounded. And this is the situation right now, and it's all being done with US weapons, a lot of which are manufactured here in Washington state by corporations like Boeing. And a lot of which is, weapons are being shipped out of JBLM, which is right next door to us. And, you as council members have a lot of power and influence, a lot of visibility and voice to speak up against this, and also bringing it back to Olympia. I want to talk about, there's such a need for affordable housing here. We have education cuts happening. And besides the $3.5 billion a year that are going to the military aid to Israel to kill Palestinian children, there's $850 billion a year that are spent every year on the military, which is absolutely insane. It's the majority of our tax money every year goes to the military to kill people overseas. And, you want to talk about shortages and, budget cuts and all of this stuff. I mean, that's where you need to be looking, and y'all need to be speaking out against it. You're here in the capital of the state. Talk to the state politicians. Tell them to push for drastic cuts to the military budget. We have a larger military budget than the next 10 countries combined. And there's absolutely no need for it. And, all of these problems you're talking about could be solved with a small percentage of the military budget. Again, free Palestine, call for a ceasefire. It's a genocide. You can look at it yourself. Thank you.
All right. Our last person that was signed up was Paul Knox.
Paul is no longer in the queue.
All right, we are done with public comment for the evening. Anyone want to make any more remarks, or are we good? All right. Mayor Pro Tem Gilman.
I just wanted to appreciate that Jen Healy's letter was really beautifully written, and Krista's response was really helpful. But it was a very detailed set of important questions that I considered in terms of the rental registration programs. I just wanted to appreciate that was some deep digging and careful thinking. It helped me.
And I would like to concur that Jennifer Healy was incredibly articulate this evening and very level-headed, considering that we just voted against all of what she wanted. All right, anything else? All right, we're going to go to council reports. I'm going to go to my right, Councilmember Madrone.
I'll let you all know next week what my reports are.
Councilmember Payne.
Nothing to report, thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem Gilman.
Nothing this evening.
Councilmember Parsley.
I'll entertain you with Lot next week.
Oh, thank you. Councilmember Nguyen.
I have a lingering one. Let me know if this is not allowed. But I do see Darian there still. I have a question about the inspection. It's not going to open a can of worms. I just felt like how we left that caused a little confusion on who would actually be doing the inspection. It's my understanding that city staff are not going to be carrying out the inspections. And for landlords, this is not meant to be a leading question, but for landlords that are already doing inspections, those inspections will be counted, right? It's not like they have to do another inspection. So could you say something about that? It's leaving me a little unsettled.
My understanding, asking that same question, was there's going to be a second inspection required.
I didn't understand that.
So city staff will not be doing the inspections. The inspection will be done by an outside staff. However, re-inspection, if it's like a tiny thing, is not going to require a full re-inspection by the private party. If it's there's a checklist in the inspection, and so many things have to trigger a re-inspection or a fail. It's pretty significant to require a re-inspection. It would be worked through our code enforcement team, or it was just, you need to do these 5 things, we'll be back in 5 years. It doesn't require a whole new process. But some apartment building that does a different sort of inspection, if they're not certified under our program that we're setting up training and TA for, if they're not certified with the city-specific certification, they'll have to get an inspection under inspectors that have the city-specific certification.
I'd love to continue talking about that as we, move on to 2025. Yes, thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah.
Thanks for asking that question. Councilmember Cooper.
Thank you, Mayor Selby. I have nothing to report.
All right. Our city manager, Jay Burney.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Nothing to report.
All right, next week we will be virtual. Everyone enjoy their turkey day or whatever they do on Thanksgiving Day. We are adjourned.